Guys, welcome back again for the final video of this week for the tech review stream. Let's get right into it, shall we? Shall we go? One, two, oh, it looks so good. Once again, the Lightseeker's tech review is today. Woo! Everyone's so excited, right? Everyone, including me, because I love these cards. Now, the tech review is the last one that I'll be doing. I do have a video for the unaligned that I'll put up after this video so that you guys can, if you want, binge watch all the card reviews or my opinions. Awesome, check out my YouTube channel, it's below, hit subscribe, that way I can post new videos and you guys can watch it and I can change my name finally to it. I really hope you guys have been enjoying these videos. I know for a fact that I have been. I'm really happy that you guys could stop by today. Yeah, check out some amazing cards. I cannot wait, White Wolf, I cannot wait. Now, personally, I will put this disclaimer out here, personally I have not played a whole lot of tech. So I'm not that familiar with how tech plays. I have seen a lot of aggression tech. I do have an Anzi the Mender mechanical buff build deck, so be a little wary with my reviews on this. I feel like this is probably my weaker one, which is really sad. At least because in my opinion, I feel like I've been doing fairly well with all these reviews so far. But tech is definitely the one that I have dabbled in the least. And I feel really bad about that because I really like the concept of tech. It's like a working machine. All of its tools are grinding really well together, like a perfect gear and whatnot. So I really want to hopefully get into more tech as this Kindred comes out and explore it a little bit, so you guys can, I can be a more well-rounded player also. But with that being said, I'll give my simple disclaimer here. These reviews that I am doing are solely based on my opinion. My opinion just based on the design of the card, whether I think it's good, whether I think it's bad, if there's too much of a gimmick to it, too much restrictions, limitations, all that stuff. It's based on a 5-star rating, 1 to 5. I will also depend on whether it should be used in like constructed, draft based on the past meta. If something I see after a while, the cards just looking at them is going to be good in the new meta. If I'm like, wow, these synergies look really good, or this new concept or new archetype they're trying to manipulate in this new tech order could be a viable thing with all the buffs and cards that I'm seeing, along with all the stuff from the old set. That being said, I hope you guys enjoy this final video of the review before Kindred drops. They said later this week, and there's only 3 more days, so it's got to be either tomorrow, Saturday, or for some reason Sunday if they wait till the last minute. But anyway, thank you for listening to my whole spiel of the whole thing. I hope you guys can, maybe if I'm doing something wrong in the tech, I will definitely start listening to you guys a lot more in this one, so that like if you guys know something more that tech does a whole lot, other than Zuna aggro or Tempest aggro, or just aggro in general. I know tech is really good at being aggressive because of all his 6 damage action cards. So if you guys saw something that I didn't, please just give me a shout out on Twitch or leave a comment on my YouTube channel if you're watching this later. But I would love to hear back from you guys. And enough of me rambling. Let's get to the card reviews. All right, the first one we have Auto Scrapper. All right, we have a tech robot. Oh, robot! I think I'm a love trying to just manipulate this family because it's so unique. I almost want to say that robot is specifically to tech. I don't think there's a single robot outside of tech. And I'm just going to do one quick search here just to double check on that, because I don't know if there's any unaligned or not. Nope, there is no unaligned. No. Oh, hold on. Nope, no unaligned. No other colors. Robot is strictly to the tech alignment, which is awesome. It's like one of the very few, if not the only one, that is specific to its alignment. So I hope that robot is flushed out enough where you can maybe find it viable. I don't know all the family mechanics with it yet, but we'll find out together, shall we? Let's go! Alright, so it's a simple mechanical buff. X on the first corner, 1 on the next one. When one of your buffs expires, draw rotation cards and deal damage to all other heroes. Man, that's kind of like, you have to really time this one properly, because it not only, like, it has to rotate to that corner, and then all of the corners need to, or all of it needs to expire, for you to be able to get to something like this. So like the lining up of it to actually get value out of it could be really difficult. I know mostly because the way, I mean, like I said, the way that the tech decks have been playing in the past have all been using action attack cards or just defend cards. They really haven't been running a whole lot of buffs outside of like a gimmick Anzi the Mender deck. And even then, a lot of those buffs are like conditional rotating. So maybe actually that's what it's for, is the conditional rotate, where you can make it rotate out on your own turn to then draw a card and deal a little bit of extra damage. So it might have a place. Depends on how many clunky corner buffs there are for tech. Because obviously it says it expires, not when leaves play, which is what the Heap was rated to, because the Heap was like an all-star card in those big tech buffs where you could, remove them and it was technically leave play and you get benefits from the heap. This expires also, so you can't like craze bomb or two of your own buffs and get the benefit from it. That being said, I really like this one. I want to say is like a 1.5. It really isn't exciting me too much with the whole expire thing. It only lasts for one corner. If it had two corners, maybe you could utilize it a little bit more. I don't know if there's a lot of stasis stuff where you could just prevent this one from rotating or do what with it, but I feel like the timing of this card, in order to get it on that one turn only, also is going to be really difficult to manipulate with, because I mean at most you'll have maybe one or two to just draw two cards and do 2 damage if 2 of your buffs expire, and it doesn't feel like it's going to be all that run. I mean, I don't even think this is probably a good one in drafts, because of how difficult it is to actually get value out of this card. A lot of the time, unless you run it just because there's limited robots and there's a lot of things like, yeah, your robot buffs do this or you get benefits from that. Maybe you just like splash one of them in there just because it's a robot buff and you need to fill that quota. Otherwise, this might even be a 1-star card just because of how difficult it is. I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play, especially if tech doesn't have enough new cards to pull it away from the just massive 6 damage action cards aggressive style that it has been playing. It has been very effectively playing it too. So that's my take on it. Next one we have is Blast Bot, another machine attack card for explosive. Okay, I like this one. 4 damage, remove 1 location buff from the recipient. Now, this card is actually, in my opinion, pretty good. I think it's gonna be really good in draft. Obviously, buff removal is really hard to do in draft. But the fact that, now that we're finally on the last set, I can actually see all the families and all the cards. So I think I'll have a somewhat better way to judge these cards now after seeing the whole set, which is really good because, like I said, tech is my weakest one. So I'm happy that I saved it for last to kind of get the whole Kindred as a whole before this one. And seeing all just the good location buffs that Mountain has had to it, that Storm had to it when I ran through that. I think even... was it Nature or was it Astral that had some actually pretty good, decent location buffs that would be run in certain decks. That location is one of those very broad, very widespread families that this would be just a good one to run. It's 4 damage, which is a solid damage, just to remove a location buff. And with how many good location buffs there are, how strong the location buffs are in the really good alignments that are out within the past meta. Like I said, their Mountain, which is like the #1 order to watch out for. There was some in Astral, which Astral's like probably the #2 and #3 to look out for. I remind you, the Tower. Is the Tower a location card now? I mean, mind you, that deck is going to be completely worked with the ban of Sunbeacon. But if the Tower is a location, then that's also a location buff that you can just get extra removal on. But yeah, I mean, it's just 4 damage, which is a lot better. I mean, if you want to think about it this way, it's a very specific buff. But compared to Raging Spirit from Nature, that was only 3 damage to remove a buff. So you get 1 more damage to kind of limit the amount of buffs you can remove with it. But then again, this is actually a buff removal for tech that doesn't make you have to remove 2 of your own buffs, which could just be really good. So depending on, it is 4 damage. It's fine. It's explosive. It's a robot card. It fits a lot of really fun niches that really get me excited for it. I think it's just a 3-star card. It's really solid. You're probably actually going to see like 1 or 2 of them in a deck. Probably like 1 and then 1 in the sideboard if you run into more heavy location decks. But yeah, I mean 4 damage is completely fine. Mind you, a lot of their cards are 6 damage, so you'll probably want to just go 2 damage is better than removing a buff. But, I mean, those are for aggressive styles. Maybe you replace one of those for a more tempo or control style, which I hope that tech finds a niche to do that other than just like, hey, I've been 6 damage, 6 damage, 6 damage. Game's over in 5 turns. Hope you had as much fun as I did just drawing my deck. So, I mean, 3-star card, I think it's going to see play. Blast Fueled Battery. All right, we got a time card machine. Defend card, okay. Take 1 damage, move up to 3 tech cards from your hand to your deck, and draw a card for each card move back +2. Interesting. Now, this card, there are a lot of cards out there in prior tech where, they deal damage to themselves and you're completely fine with that, especially if you run like more of a Contra Bubble deck, which a lot of people didn't see because it was just more efficient to kill your opponent as opposed to get synergy with dealing damage to yourself, dwindling you down to below 15 and all that stuff. But this is a really efficient card draw that I think it's going to be like a 5-star card in draft, definitely, because card draw is really difficult to come in for draft, so this one's going to be really good. Mind you, it is only tech cards, so you have to kind of draft around to get the tech card value of it. But still, essentially, if you only move 1 tech card back, you take 1 damage, move 1 tech card back, and then draw 3. Um, or it's literally just take 1 damage, draw 2. If you don't move, if you have no tech cards to move back in any other deck, it's just 1 damage, draw 2, which is just really good. It's really good value. I mean, even just splashing time into another deck just to run this to get card draw could be really good. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I think this is gonna see a lot of play. This is like a 4, if not a 4.5 star card. It's a time card defend for card draw. We've already seen. I'm trying to think of what was the Tyrax card that was the awake or the mythical one where you drew 3 and then had to put 2 back on. It was either back on top or whatnot. But essentially, it was like you drew 3 cards and got to decide which ones you were going to keep from your whole hand, which is just really good. There's a lot of really good time card manipulation, card drawing, but you also have to move cards back or do other things with it. Whereas this one is, you move them back first, and then you just draw 2 plus however many you move back. So if you're in a Tyrax Historian, thank you, White Wolf. But yeah, if you're like in a really aggressive situation and you're just holding Tyrax Engineer, which is now banned, Tyrax Fixer in your hand, and you're like, wow, I don't really need to heal, I need aggression. You put those back and you draw, 4 or 5 cards. You could, if the opposite, if all you have is aggression or buff removal cards you've been holding on to for a while, you draw this, put those back in your deck, and hope to bejeebus that you draw cards that are actually more effective to you at the situation that you're in. So I think it's going to be a really good card. Mind you, it says move up to, so you actually don't even have to move your tech cards, because it's your choice. You can move 0 and still just draw 2 from it by taking 1 damage. So it's a really strong, versatile card that I think is going to be a very, very good card engine for all of tech. And I think, honestly, in some decks, you're probably going to see like 3 of them run, just if they're really trying to cycle through your deck. I think it's going to be an all-star card for 4.5, hands down, for the new tech order, just for how much card drawing that they do already that has been kind of the same thing, but just the fact that you could literally just, I'll take 1 damage, draw 2 cards. I mean, essentially, like, Dolo would do that hands down. Dolo takes 3 damage to draw 2 cards. Mind you, that's an ability. This is an action card. And we've also seen how redundant some of the cards are that you can just put them back into your hand from the graveyard. So getting cards like this to reuse for tech, for machine, all that order, it's a lot of fun. When is Kindred being released in the app? It said that it was going to be released mid to late this week. So late this week could be Friday, the end of the work week, or it could be Sunday for all we know. But I do know they have put the patch notes up on their website, and they have said that it is coming out late this week. So if not tomorrow, then Saturday or Sunday, because it obviously hasn't come out today. Usually they post stuff really early in the morning because it's in the UK, so they're like almost a 12-hour time difference. So for them, the afternoon is really early in the morning for us. So it's kind of one of those things where when it comes out, it'll be like 6 a.m. and we can play it all day. It's going to be great. So, all right, on to the next card. Blast Proof Defender. All right, we have a mechanical buff. All 4 clunky corners, 2/1/1/1. Reduce damage received by rotation. If this buff expires, draw 1 card. This actually isn't that bad. This is really good. It doesn't limit you to attack cards like a lot of the other clunky corner ones have been doing, or just buff damage. It's pure damage reduction for the next 4 sources of damage, and it is only like 1, so it's minor. So if a Spark Whiz comes at you, you're only going to take 1 less. But the fact that it's so low means that the reward for having you just quickly rotate out is really good. To draw a card, obviously for tech, they have a lot of sources of card draw, a lot of card engine and whatnot. For draft, this is like, I don't know, 4 or 5 star for draft. It's card draw, it's damage prevention, all rolled into 1. It's going to be really good. Mind you, this is also one of the cards for like Auto Scrapper that I said with more clunky corner cards. Auto Scrapper could be better because you could rotate your buffs out on your own turn. Mind you, you have to do it in a really synergistic way, almost build around Auto Scrapper, which is not a card to build a deck around at all. But I mean, I think this is I want to say it's like a 3-star card, I'd say. Mind you, tech. The reason I gave it like more than a 2, because obviously the damage reduction is very minor. It doesn't really matter a whole lot. But I gave it a 3 because tech is also one order specifically that has a lot of cards and synergy that's like if you're below 15 or less health. So you don't really want to run a whole lot of damage prevention because there are times when, like, if you run it in a specific deck, you want your health to get below 15 to really get benefits from, like, Shatter Blast, from Tyrex Engineer, or Tyrex Fixer. All these cards that get a big boost from being below 15, but, like, this helps you still get low, but get low at a slower pace that you kind of, like, mitigate and control a little bit better. So actually, I think this card is going to probably see a really good, decent amount of play. It might see 2 of, if not 3 of, it might replace Junkyard. I forgot what their normal just base buff is. It's like 2/2/2. Your attacker takes 1 damage. I forget what the card's name is, but I know what it does. I don't play attack a whole lot, so I'm sorry about the name. But I think Blastproof Defender in some decks where you don't care about preventing a whole lot of damage, this could just be replaced with it. They're both mechanical. This one obviously draws you a card. Ramparts. Thank you, White Wolf. Ramparts is the card I was thinking of. But yeah, Blastproof Defender I think could just be a solid replacement for it. Just like I said, because tech gets such an upgrade from a lot of cards that make it so when you're below 15 or less health, you get a bigger impact on them. And this helps you get down that low without getting down there so rapidly that you have to defend, as opposed to utilizing it for attack and, using what those cards are good for. So I think this is a very good card for the tech order from what I have seen in the past. I think it's going to be a really good card to play. Booby Trapper. All right, we got a Kriebel. A Kriebel in tech? What? Awesome. We have it's a consistent buff for explosive. Okay. The next time any of your machine or location buffs are about to be removed or returned by another hero, they take 7 damage and you take 2 damage. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, I've only seen. I haven't seen a single machine buff or location for tech. But there are a lot of locations all spread out. There's even some in the unaligned, so maybe that's better. Machine buffs, obviously machine is a very strong tech family. So this card, depending on how the machine deck works, how many machine buffs there are, I'm going to do like just a sneak peek here. Just look for machine buffs. I'm just going to do a kind of a count number. So there's 10 total machine buffs in the entire game. 10 total machine buffs. Only 7 of them are for tech. And then we have location for tech. There are 2 location buffs for tech. So you have a total of 9 buffs to really work with this card. Or no, that was just the Kindred. Sorry, let's go a little further this. Sorry. Location, there's 5 for tech. And machine, there is 16. So there's actually a decent amount of machine and location buffs for tech that you might be able to build a viable deck around it. It is a really high damaging amount. I know there is the assassin in Dread that essentially does the same thing, that if your buffs are about to be removed by another player, they would take 4. This is 7 damage, and a lot of people saw 4 not as such a big deal. There's even a time buff where if your buffs are about to be removed or returned, you get to return action cards to your hand. So that was obviously really good value. A lot of people ran that. But, I mean, the Booby Trapper, I think this could just be really fun to incorporate. I mean, mind you, it is a Kriebel card, so you don't really consider the family that much, because Kriebel isn't that big of a family that's been fully fleshed out yet outside of Unaligned. You might just want to splash this into, Mountain's location deck, just to put this in here for explosive, depending on what the explosive weapon does. Maybe it's viable to do it. Or just to have it be like, hey, I have this card out consistently. If you try to remove any of my location buffs, you're going to take 7. Have fun with that. I mean, there's this card could be really good. Obviously, in draft, I don't think it's going to do nothing for you in draft. It's going to be a dead card. So it's like a 1-star in draft because it's very specific to a family. But if my rating is also, it goes into basically how would you use it, and then I would give my rating on that, because you would never use this card outside of a deck that you don't run machines or you don't run locations. It's not worth running because it affects only those cards. But I think maybe just putting a 1 of in the deck, in a very machine type buff based or location type buff based, this would just be fine. I think it's like a 3-star card. It's nothing that really improves on or really solidifies that as a deck archetype. It's just it helps it. It's 7 damage if your opponent starts removing your buffs that you obviously wanted out or want to expire with all this other stuff. I kind of wish it would have been like machine or robot to really flesh out the tech. But I mean, location it's a really standardized buff. We've seen it in Storm, we've seen it in Astral Mountain, even in Nature. Like there's a lot of locations all spread out. So I'm actually kind of happy that it is also location as well. But yeah, I think this card is going to see a lot of play, not just in Tech, but you might see like even one or two splashed into decks that run a very family oriented with one of those two. Because yeah, you take 2 damage, but I mean a lot of locations out there will heal you or prevent damage from stuff like that. Like it'll almost nullify the 2 damage, and then they just take 7. Mind you, you could remove this buff and not take anything because this is also not a machine. It's or location. It's a Creeble card, so it doesn't affect from being prevented by remove from itself. But it is one of those like, hey, if you want to remove my good stuff, you got to remove Booby Trapper first. Otherwise, you're just going to keep taking damage. So it's kind of one of those buff removal baits in a certain deck. So I give it a 3-star card. You probably only run 1. I don't see running more than that unless you like really, really hate people who have a lot of buff removal. We'll see how it goes. All right. Bot Launcher. All right, we got 4 clunky corners, explosive, machine buff. All right, more machine buffs. Awesome. 3, 4, 5, 6. That's very increasingly wise. Attack ability. Remove a robot buff you have in play. Deal damage. Very interesting. So this leads me to believe that this is only going to be played obviously in a big robot deck. So it's not going to leave Tech any way whatsoever because there's no robots outside of Tech. I'm also going to do really quick here what robot cards they have, or how many they do have for buffs. There is 10 total robot buffs, so just keep that in mind throughout all of the set. All of them are Tech. So you have 10 cards to run with Bot Launcher. Depending on what those robot buffs are or how potent they are, having this be in there just to kind of help them remove them for extra damage after they've been doing their thing. You won't get the expire effects from a lot of the other things, but it's just, your buffs, once they're done being used, you throw them in people's face. You have fun like that. I want to say, is Bombling a robot card now? I want to say Bombling got improved to a robot card. So, mind you, obviously, once you attack with it, Bombling will trigger and you can't remove Bombling, so that's kind of null and point. I don't know why I said that. I forgot Bombling was a clunky corner card. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it all depends on how strong the robot buffs are. I'm going to give, like I said, you're not going to run this outside of robots. You're not going to do anything. I'd say a 1 of this card in a robot deck. Probably a 4-star card in the robot ones. It's very efficient damage if you just have a lot of robot buffs and you want to attack and remove them. It's, what does it come out to? 11 plus 18 damage with 1 card. It's better than most combos that Tech has. It's better than actually all combos that Tech have. So I mean, it's one of those where your opponent will look at it and be like, okay, this is going to do a lot of damage. Mind you, it's also going to cost you 4 buff cards. But I don't know how actually recursion for Tech has been going lately. For graveyard recursion, I don't know if they actually have anything that's like return cards from your graveyard, or if you want to just splash something in there. If you want to splash like Soul to put Root Singer in there, you'll have more buffs. Obviously, you're running a robot buff heavy deck to put Root Singer back in there, which could be a lot of fun. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that's just something me to do. But I mean, it obviously helps a robot deck. It pushes it probably to that little bit limit to make it more viable. But then again, it is just 1 buff. Once you put it out there, people can remove it. So it's not like, unless you can bring buffs back now with these new cards, it's maybe like a 3-star card and a robot card. It's a solid card. It helps it out. It doesn't make or break a deck. And it's, unless you're running 3 of them, when your opponent removes, it's not even a robot itself, it's a machine. So like machine and robot obviously will have to go hand in hand for supporting one another and whatnot. But obviously once you have it, it's good. But it's a very, very targeted buff removal or buff card to be removed. That is probably like once you lay there, like, nope, can't do that. I'll let your robot buffs just do whatever they want to now. So 3-star. It's nothing insane like how Hive Mind was, or just other buffs where it was really good that was played in a way that I thought could be utilized really well. But I mean, it's really fun. This card makes me want to try a robot buff deck to see how Bot Launcher actually performs in it. But I mean, it's also an attack ability. You could run Fumbling Alchemist. You could run Crazed Bomber to do 6 damage more efficiently, costing you a card essentially with the robot buff. I mean, if Tech had a lot less attack damage cards, then maybe this would be more appealing to me. But because it's only around the same damage that the normal attack cards do also, that's why I'm kind of like, meh, it helps the robot buff deck, yeah, but the same attack damage is running an attack card for explosive, that kind of thing. So, on to the next one. C25 Combat Warper. We have a time card attack machine, or yeah, it's a robot. Sorry, robot machine, same thing essentially. One has a hive mind for AI, one builds them. C25 Combat Warper. Return 1 action buff to the recipient's hand, 3 damage. I actually really like this card. It's not buff removal. It's, you know, if something was about to happen on its final corner, there's obviously a lot of buffs that say, hey, this can't be removed. There's also buffs, of course, that say that can't be returned. But Tech has been really good about running a lot of, or not Tech, but Time in general, has been returning a lot of just return buffs as opposed to destroy buffs, because Craves Bomber is really efficient buff removal, but it also hurts you. So just returning their hand is you know, essentially buff removal for a turn. It sets them back a turn when they would have laid it, then returned to their hand, so they got to spend another half of their turn to put that same card back out again. And it is like 3 damage, so it's fine. This card, I mean, it's a decent card. If you're running a specific robot family where you want the robot cards in it, sure. Otherwise, I'm sitting here like, why wouldn't you just play Warp Toad? The damage doesn't matter with how aggressive Tech already is, and Warp Toad returns multiple buffs as opposed to just one. That has to be on someone else that's not you, so maybe you wanted to return one of your own buffs. You can't do that because it's an attack card. Like I said, the 3 damage doesn't really matter to me that much. Everyone's running the 5 or 6 attack cards because there's such a variety to them. I mean, even people are running Chrono Moth because it's draw cards. And it just, with, like I said, I'm really hoping Tech leads more into the more tempo-based or more control-y based, where returning buffs could be a viable solution, but if you splash in a lot of the more efficient card draw as opposed to this one, or Chrono Moth, but I don't see that happening yet, just because of how solidified the base set is on being how aggressive it is. Everyone knows that Crazy Bomber's best value is if you don't run any buffs in a deck, so why run buffs when you can run the very best attack cards in the game? So this one, I mean, it's a solid card, but I'm going to give it like a 2-star because it doesn't do anything inventive or new. Warp Toad is better than it. Chrono Moth is almost the same. It's just a beast instead of, or no, it's an insect instead of a robot. Returning one of your opponent's buffs, yes, it could set them back in tempo-wise, but I mean, at the same time, you're like, if I wanted to focus on returning someone's buff or controlling them a little better, I would just run Warp Toad or do something that could manipulate it easier. Maybe even like a Fountain of Time, just to move it forward so they don't get the benefit on their turn, something like that. There's a lot better time cards to run over this, is what I'm essentially saying in a lot of run-on sentences. So I'm gonna give it like a 2-star. Maybe it finds a better home in a robot-specific deck. We'll find out. We'll find out together. All right, next one we have Mechanical Creeble. More Creeble cards. All right, I'm liking it. I'm liking it. Defend card. Take 1 damage. Restart all your machine and robot buffs. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now this one I am very intrigued about. Because I mean, lately I've been seeing a lot of the machine and robots have been clunky corners to kind of rotate out on their own that we've had in the past, or they only have 1 corner to last on for the 1 turn. But the fact that you can, I think Colossi Cannon is now a machine as well. What's the card? Perpetual Cannon? That's probably now a machine as well too. That one could just get restarted. Obviously, you take 1 damage, which will restart that one anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. But this is going to be, I think, a really good card in a machine and robot buff deck, because it affects both families, which is awesome, not just one. And depending on what the buffs are, what you want them to do, restarting them for better benefits could just be really good. And obviously, it's a take 1 damage. So it's one of those slowly mitigating you down to get below 15. So I'm trying to feel out how this is going to look without looking at all the cards real quick and decide what robots are trying to do. But it feels like the robot deck is trying to be one of those like more decks that gets you to around the 15 or less area, and then just blows up with machines and robots and stuff like that, and just really hammers you down after you get down to a certain point. So you're going to use those buffs to start dwindling your opponent down while you kind of take mitigating damage, restart them to get efficiency out of them, and then late game you just like Shatter Blast or stuff like that to just really hit home for the less than 15 kind of stuff. So if that's how it is, then I called it with seeing 4 cards. Woo! If not, then I'm wrong. I don't know. But I mean, I'm going to say this is like a 3-star card. Only going to be running machine and robot buff decks, obviously. Not going to see anywhere else, so don't bother trying to rate this outside of that deck. It's not going to be seen. It's like a 0-star card compared to that. Which means it's only going to be seen in tech, so don't even try and think about splashing it anywhere. I don't think machines are almost anywhere other than like on a line. And yeah, it really all depends on how good and efficient the buffs will be with robot and machine. That, mind you, because this is mechanical, you can use this one over like Fountain of Time and other stuff where your time cards can now be your draw engines, where you can use mechanical as more of support as well, while time is trying to draw your cards, cycle through your deck faster, so that you can get benefits from when you're down below. So I really like the fact that it's not a time; it's a mechanical one, which helps balance out what they want the 3 orders to do in the alignment. So I think it's like a 3-star card. It's a solid card. You maybe run 2 of them in a deck. I don't know. 3 might be a little overdoing it because past 3, it's like, well, drawing it late in the game and you only have 2 buffs left, it's going to do nothing for you. You'd rather have something that helps you finish out the game, is what I'm saying. So I'd say 3-star, maybe 1 or 2 in a deck would be pretty viable. I'm getting really intrigued on these robot buff decks. I can't wait to try them. Chain Reactor. All right, we got a mechanical buff, explosive, continuous, unique. Okay, can't have more than 1. Or wait, why does it have unique and then if you have 2 or more? That's interesting. I wonder if that's an error, because the other ones that have that kind of same wording on it, like the Mountain one, did not have unique, because unique literally means if it's a second one, that card is dormant. But maybe it's because like, oh no, okay, let me read the card and then I'll explain to you why it has that. If you have 1 Chain Reactor in play, increase the first damage dealt per turn by 1. If you have 2 or more, increase all damage done by 1. The reason it also has unique is because it doesn't say, like, if this is your leftmost one, deal 1 damage. If anything past the leftmost, increase the damage done by 1 or something like that. Because then you could have 3, and this would increase it by 2. It would essentially increase your first damage done by 3, as opposed to just being 2, no matter even how many you have out. Which I kind of wish it was more like that. I feel like that would have been a fine comparison to the Mountain buff, but it's fine. It's fine. Chain Reactor obviously increases the first damage dealt by a turn by 1. Not that beneficial, especially like unless you're. Let me put this past. Yep, you can play more than 1. Yep. Sorry, I'm rambling and reading. Get a little bit of delay there, but yes, you can play more than 1. It's just the unique will not also get the benefit because of the way that the card is worded makes it a little weird of why this one has unique as opposed to the other ones. But I think it's fine. The way I'm looking at it, it's not going to be used in the more very aggressive style decks beforehand, mostly because those decks didn't run any buffs. So they ran it so that your opponent didn't have chance for buff removal to kind of set you back, which means that if you run this in that deck, these are the only buffs for your opponent's buff removal. So once you lay them, they're going to get auto buff removed. So there's no point in laying them in the past meta in all the aggressive decks that have been playing with just strict attack and defend cards. There's no reason to run Chain Reactor. Besides, it's only the first one. It's not the continuous. You don't get power for the entire turn. So I think, I don't know, maybe this has some benefit if there's like, obviously it's not even a machine buff that can be restarted with some of the other cards that we've seen. It is a machine buff that Booby Trapper goes along with really well. It's a continuous one that's like, hey, I need to remove it, as it being the first damage will increase by 1. I mean, after a while, if you can get it properly working, if you have it out for like 3 or 4 turns, this buff essentially does 3 or 4 damage. So if you think about it that way, it could be fine if you're consistently dealing damage once per turn, which means you probably want to have like a weapon or some way to do an ability to deal damage every single turn and do it like that. Chain Reactor, it's a nice concept. It's really cool. Obviously, you're either going to run 3 or none to get the benefit from Chain Reactor as a whole. But I don't think it's going to have that strong of a presence. I feel like Chain Reactor is better in draft than it would be in constructed, because as I've been saying before, buff removal in draft is very difficult to do. So just having this sit out there and be like a consistent damage increase every turn, and if you're lucky enough to draft 2, way to go, you get them both out there. Very hard to remove in draft, and it's a machine. I'm not sure outside of blue if they ever ran like remove a specific machine buff, but like it doesn't hype me up as much as I'd want it to. It doesn't hype me up the way the Mountain card did, that did the same thing as this, the new one. I mean, I'll give this like a 1.5. I don't see this unless as the robot and machine decks start getting more viable and start being played. And there is a lot of just consistent damage at the beginning of your turn that you can do without using actions, maybe even two from your buffs. Then maybe you'll put Chain Reactor out there just to have more consistent buffs that are robots, that are machines you can utilize. Obviously, you can't even lay it with Bot Launcher because Bot Launcher is a robot and this is a machine, so you don't even really get to utilize it with that as much as often as you'd like. But I mean, yeah, it doesn't do it for me. 1 damage at the first of your turn, like it's only for the first source. There's cards other than increased power for the entire turn for nature that you can splash into this if you really want that. It doesn't really spark my interest. I'll have to see how the machine and robot deck all compiles out to see if it's worth putting, but I think right now it's like a 1, maybe a 1.5. Where I really like the conceptual idea, I just don't think in practice it's ever going to see play, unless you're going for the memes, which, you know, I'm gonna try and be the king meme here. I'm gonna go for it all the time. All right, Epic Master. I am already in love with this name. Oh my god. Time defend card. Rotate all of your action buffs 1 step forward or 1 action buff 1 step backward. Oh my. Oh my. First of all, it doesn't have a family, which means that it don't try and fit this into a family oriented. So yes and no, there's benefits to it, but the fact that like rotate all of your action buffs 1 step forward. This card could be incredibly aggressive value. Mind you, Tech, the way it has been playing before, almost runs no buff cards. No buff whatsoever at all. There's better... with Tech, you're only really trying to get 1 or 2 buffs forward, rotated really quickly. So I still think that like Fountain of Time is a really good way to do that, or if you like... because Fountain of Time also goes forward and backwards, it's a lot more versatile. I see this card mostly being played outside of Tech until I figure out how the robot and machine buff kind of concept works and if it's worthy. But like putting this in a beast buff deck, just running time in there, depending on what the time weapon does, putting this in there to rotate all of your buffs forward by 1 to really get that aggressive style. If you have like 3 buffs, you rotate them all forward 1 to just get that extra push of damage. This card could feel like a game ender card when like, I don't know, like I said, going with nature. If you have that the snake buff that we just reviewed this week, you have like Corporate Conspiracy out. Like you have all these really good, nice animal beast buffs that just deal damage, and they all went forward 1, and then you rotate them all forward again. Could just be insane, especially if you were like, this is reviewing it for nature. It feels really weird. If you have like the Raging Spirit in there, you rotate all of your buffs forward, get them all under Raging Spirit, and then having Raging Spirit go off, and it's just like, what? I was waiting for like last turn to do that, trying to prepare it, but you know, this literally brings an entire turn forward when your opponent thought they had one more turn to defend. So I mean, like, this card has really good aggressive potential. I just don't see that potential in Tech. I see it a lot of outside of Tech, but inside of Tech, you're not running that many buffs that you care about rotating all of them forward. If you wanted to rotate 1 action forward or backward, you'd run Fountain of Time. You'd run that 9 times out of 10 over Epic Master. So I don't know how to value this one inside of Tech. I feel like outside of Tech it's going to be like a 4-star card, maybe, to splash in depending on what the time weapon does. Inside of Tech, I want to give it like a 2-star. Like I said, just because there's cards like Fountain of Time, there's cards, even like Warp Toad, once it's at that final corner, you can return to your hand, lay it again, get better benefits from it like that. So I don't know how it's really going to work, but we will find out together how robots and machines work trying to be aggressive like that. If this card does work really well, if they are trying to be more aggressive, this card could be like just a one of as the game-ending card you lay right when at the right moment after you've lined all your buffs out. Mind you, you can't pick and choose which ones go forward. It's all of your action buffs forward. So it's all of them or none of them. So you don't even get that really good auto scrapper turn that you would try and lead up to hold auto scrapper and use on like specific ones to have them rotate out. I feel like that would have been pretty fun if it was like rotate a variant of action buffs 1 step forward. So like this card with auto scrapper would be really good, almost too good. But it doesn't tickle my fancy inside of Tech, just because of how the format has been playing the past 2 sets, with their running almost no buffs, or discontinuous buffs if you're trying to do that. Where there's better cards to manipulate stuff like that. You don't need to do all of them when you could just do the one that you want to move forward with it. So I'm gonna give it like a 2-star. Probably way better outside of Tech is what I'm saying. So look for this card when people splash in time, that this card is probably the one they splashed it in for the just mass one turn. Limb Replacer B6. All right, we have a robot buff that's 3, constitutional corners, or non-conditional rotating corners. Corners 1 and 2, move cards from your hand to your deck. Corner 3, healing and draw 2 cards, or 6 healing and then draw 2 cards. This one is just, it almost hurts me. Like, you move for the first 2 turns, you have a major detriment to you. That's literally like every turn you lose a card. So if you're trying to do stuff on a turn, trying to keep pace with your opponent, these 2 turns, this is out for the first and second corner, you like take 2 steps backward while your opponent is taking 3 steps forward. You're losing so much value. It's not like you have to remove a buff, or hey, you have to, like, even discard a card would probably be better, because the discarding would go into your graveyard with the graveyard recursion cards. It wouldn't be that bad, but like moving it to your deck, yes, I could see this being played in more of a long, drawn-out stuff, but like drawing 2 cards after putting 2 cards back, we literally just saw the Blast Field Battery do a much better feel of that instantly than having to wait. It's only healing, it's not even damage, so it's like defensive while you're maybe tossing away defend cards. This is like a 1-star card. It's not good. It's the detriment is way too strong or too big of an effect on you before you actually get a benefit from it. And for all you know, your opponent's like, all right, I'll wait for those 2 corners, then I'll remove this buff, so you don't even get to draw 2 cards, you don't get the healing, and you've already moved 2 cards back from your hand to your deck. This card literally just hurt you. It hurt you so much, and it's probably almost never going to see play. This is just a really, really detrimental setback for the very limited value that you get. It's only 6 healing. There's better healing inside of tech. There's Tyrex Fixer. There's the emergency system, like really good beneficial healing. That, why would you wait 2 turns to get 6 healing and draw 2 cards if there's way better card draw and way better healing that does this 10 times better without being a detriment? We'll see how the machine family all plays out in the end. Maybe it is better. I don't know. Maybe they do stuff that depends on hand size. We'll see. I just don't see this card almost ever being played. It's probably not even a good card in draft, honestly. Because you lay it in draft, yes, they can't remove buffs, so probably we'll get to its final corner more often than not. But at the same time, in draft, still putting cards back is a universal detriment. You don't want to do that. You don't want to diminish your own hand size if you don't have to. Malfunctioning Sentry. All right, we have a machine, explosive, defend. Remove a buff you control to move 2 cards from your enemy's hand to your deck. See, now this is 10 times better than this. Want to know why? Because it's instant effect, and it's your enemy's hand. Enemy's hand. Mind you, you have to remove a buff. Okay, so you remove a buff that maybe already did its thing. You remove a buff that you already got value from, you don't need it out in the field anymore, and then your opponent moves 2 cards, not 2 action cards, not attack or defense, just 2 cards, so it can hit combos, from their hand to their deck. That hurts your opponent so much. I've said it literally just last card, that your hand size, especially in a game like this where you don't draw every turn, where you have to manipulate your turns to figure out the good draw mechanics and stuff like that, and draw a card is so powerful. This is anti-draw. This is anti-draw for your opponent. A lot of decks out there I have been seeing have, when they go to the finishing turns, they only have like 3 or 4 cards in their hand that are like attack, defend. It's cards that they've using to build up to and stuff like that. So using this on a really strong turn when you're like maybe about to die, you probably don't want to run more than 1, maybe 2 is pushing it in a type of deck. But just like playing it on really good efficient turns. To remove 2 cards is completely fine. Completely fine. And it's only remove a buff. I mean, for anything, you could lay a buff and then do this to remove a buff that you didn't even care about. Like, you could just do it in that turn to get a benefit from it. Just the value out of this is going to be so good, especially if you try and actually build more of a control or a tempo tech deck, which I hope to see past the aggressive stuff. I hope the tech starts being a little more versatile, other than like, we do one thing really well and that's all we're going to do type of archetype from one alignment. I really hope they start broadening their horizons like everyone else has been doing. But yeah, I think this card is a very good step forward in that more control-y archetype. I think this is like a 4-star card. It's going to see play. It's going to be amazing in draft. It's like a 5-star card in draft. I can almost guarantee it. It's going to be a 4-star card. It's explosive. It doesn't even require you to remove like a machine or a robot buff, so you could splice this into a lot of other decks that play the more control-y style. Just move them back in your hand. I think it's going to see a lot of play. It's going to be really good. Probably even some good tech choices if you're going against like certain decks that are maybe trying to win the late game, trying to out heal you. Move their heal back, and then just you have a bigger turn for aggression when they're drawing again and stuff like that. So like it's maybe even a good counter mill. So it's going to see a lot of thing on ladder to mess with those mill decks that are like just drawing and have a whole lot of heals in their hand. Be like, no more healing for you. I'm going to consistently keep doing damage. So I think it's going to be really good. I think you're going to see a lot of play out of this card in and outside of draft, constructed, like even outside of tech. I think it's just a solid card. Deliverance, how far into the set are you? Just joined. Deliverance, thanks for joining, man. We are on the M's. I don't know how far that is. It looks like there is a, let's see here, we have, this is our 13th card out of 48. So, I mean, yeah, we're a little less than, or not. We're not even halfway. So you're completely fine to join in now. If you really want to catch it, I'm going to upload this to YouTube when I'm all done, so you can check it on my YouTube channel. The link is down below in the info. So thanks for joining me, man. Thanks for popping in. Hoping you get a good evaluation of how my tech review is going. So yeah, no problem, man. Anytime. And feel free to ask questions, and I'll hopefully be able to answer them while I'm going back and forth between this. So yeah, welcome to the channel. All right, so we have a time machine buff, 2 clunky corners. Once again, I'm seeing a lot more machine buffs, so maybe that whole archetype is starting to grow on me. Like I said, I was really hoping it would do something. Seeing more of them come out after I'm not even going this far through, it gives me hope. It gives me a lot of drive to do this, guys. All right, we have a defendability. Rotate 1 action buff on any hero 1 step backward or forward. Now, I just really like this. I really like this card. It's like really good control or aggression. The versatility to it. Because you can also affect any other hero 1 step forward or backward, and not just backward or something like that, or forward. If you're trying to delay them a little bit, you can do that. If you're trying to speed things up so they expire too quick, you can do that with it for the next 2 turns. So like this is just, I think it's a really good versatile card. It's a really solid built card. You maybe only want to run like 1 in a deck, maybe 2 is pushing it, depending on how control you are of an archetype. But I mean, I give it a 3-star. It's a solid card. It fits a family really nice that does a lot of buffs that you want maybe continuous stuff to run from, and it's very versatile because it can do both forward and backward on you or your opponent. There's a lot of ways to use this card in a lot of different situations, which means it's a very well-rounded card. It doesn't fit into so much of a needlepoint niche where it has to be used a specific way. You can toss it into any other deck and just utilize it really well. Like I said, based on the previous meta where they ran no buff cards, it's really hard to judge it to them. It's like, it's not even worth card running there. You'd run an action card so you don't have to remove the buffs. But yeah, I think in this one, it's a 3-star card. It's going to see not a lot of play, but a decent amount of play. I mean, in draft, it's pretty fun to run this in draft, just to mess with your opponent's buffs for 2 buffs, or your own if you really want to utilize them properly. This could be just, it's a solid card. I think it's a well-designed card that doesn't, its power level is not incredible or just terrible. It's like right in the middle. It's just a well-made card. Repair Bot. All right, 1115 for robot. Healing across the board. I actually really like this card. Tech, mind you, does have a lot of really efficient just burst healing with, like I said, Tyrex Fixer. Emergency system, which just heals you for 7, which is you mostly lay it when you're low to heal anyway. That getting like micro heals for 1, 1, 1, and then a big one at the end for 5. So like your opponent could look at this and be like, oh man, I've been trying to apply a lot of pressure. Yes, the micro heals are going off, so he's getting like 1, 1, 1, which means that you have some time to still get below 15 before you burst heal or do anything really big to utilize those cards where you are below 15. It's a robot buff, which I have not seen a whole lot of really good robot buffs yet within all these new cards. So I'm really liking the fact that they have a good solid robot family card that you are going to be happy putting on the field for 4 turns to stay out there. I mean, this could be one that you also want to use, that you could use with Bot Launcher. Have it go off in its final corner for 5 and then throw it in their face for however much damage. Maybe these are the kind of cards that make a good robot deck, and that's what I'm really happy to see. I'm probably going to give this just a 3-star rating. You're only going to see it probably in a more buff-centered deck. You're not going to see it in the aggressive style where they run no buffs or whatever, so that's fine. It's all of, from what I'm seeing is a lot of these new cards are all for the new meta that's going to happen, the new way tech is going with a lot more buff-centered stuff. And I think this is just a solid buff to play out. It's 4 corners. It's going to stay out there a little while. It's not that threatening to your opponent until obviously it hits for 5 healing, which is just the big burst heal. So your opponent might not even try to remove this. And even if they do, if they want to wait till the 5 corner, you got 3 heal out of it, which is completely fine. They wasted a buff removal on something that was just, it was defensive wise while they were trying to put on that pressure. I think it's very fine. It's a very fine, good, solid card. I mean, you might even try and run 3 of this just based on how aggressive some of the other cards can be. That just having this as your buff heals for your micro heals to still kind of keep you in the game past below 15, and then utilize it with cards like Bot Launcher or stuff like that, where manipulating your buff so it rotates back will heal you for 1, then come back for 5. There's a lot of really fun versatility with this, and I really like this card. I think it's gonna be a fun card to see, and it now officially, it went all the way to the R's before I officially got hope that robot buff could be a meta deck to play. So I'm starting to like that better, that I'm seeing good cards finally. So yeah, cross my fingers that we can finally make this work, and I really think this is a card that is just, it doesn't make or break a deck, it's just a good solid fit to a deck. I think it's going to see some play. Robot Factory. Alright, so we have, oh, it's a location, seriously? Well, I guess it is a factory, it makes the robots. I'll go with that, fine. We have 3 clunky corners, each for 1, and the first one is a dormant buff. When you play a robot card, gain rotation additional actions. Now this card, guys, you are going to only play in a robot deck, and I think you're going to want to run like 3 of these in there, almost, like maybe 3 is pushing it, maybe 2. Risk of late corner centric buffs in tech is Crazed Bomber. That is very true. That is very true, which is why I'm like, maybe you speed up the buffs with Fountain of Time, maybe you do some of this. I have been seeing a lot of buff manipulation in this set as well, so that's also what I'm factoring in as well. Like I said, we have Fountain of Time. We just reviewed one that was, you can rotate all of your action buffs 1 step forward, so like you can really cycle through them to get better benefits from it as well. So, and it is a robot, so essentially you could do cards that remove that buff to get a benefit with like Bot Launcher. So maybe the deck only runs like 2 Crazed Bombers, and it runs some other, it runs like Blast Bot, which is a location buff removal, which we've already decided is, locations are pretty well rounded. So maybe you run more Blast Bot, which is a robot card in fact too, over Crazed Bombers, and you just try not to care too much about their buff or what their buffs do as opposed to what your deck is trying to do. Maybe that's what robots are trying to do. Maybe that's what tech is trying to more become. I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out. But yeah, any risk of any buff that's like more than 2 corners in tech is the fact that their buff removal kills it, and you sometimes won't even get that fact. But that's true. That's very true. That's a solid point to bring up, Deliverance. But this card I think is like it really makes a robot deck work. Yes, it is a location buff instead of a robot, but location cards, as we've seen from Blastbot, is a really good set. Blastbot becomes more valuable as more of these location cards become more prominent. And it's like whenever you play a robot card, not a robot buff or anything like that, it's just play it, you get an additional action. So the next 3 robot cards you do, you get an additional action, which means it doesn't waste your turn. You can still use it for card draw, laying more cards, getting a lot of buffs on the field. So like what I'm seeing here is, it's not stat restrictions too, so you have to kind of play it around properly in a certain deck to make sure you're playing with your superior element and not running a whole bunch of stuff. So hopefully you're running tech, because it looks like a lot of robots are becoming tech. Maybe there's some explosive as well, but I mean I could see this card being like the all-star of robots, where like you lay this and then your next turn you have 2 actions, and then you decide like 4 robot cards in a turn and you still have 2 actions, and you're like, cool, now I'll just draw 2 cards to help refill my hand. Like this card I could see being really well done. I mean this card maybe even helps you play Auto Scrapper too, because it's one of those buffs that is conditional rotating, so you can rotate it out, gives you additional actions to then help rotate out other buffs. So maybe like with this card, an Auto Scrapper becomes better instead of just like that 2-star card that I gave it before. Maybe all of this synergy is actually working really well now that we're finally going through the set further and further. But like this is going to be like, it's like a 4.5. It's nothing that makes robot decks instantly win. It's nothing that like dominates other sets or other families that we've seen, but it does solidify what you're trying to do with robots to the point where it's like, it's a card you almost need to have if you're trying to build a robot deck, because of how much benefit you get from it just from just playing the cards you wanted to play in the first place. So like 4.5, really close to 5-star rating because, like I said, my rating system also goes with you're never going to see this card outside of a robot deck. It's null and void in that. You're not going to probably try and splash it into another color because it only works with robots, which are only in tech. So my rating for all you newcomers that have now come to the channel, like Deliverance here, my rating system, if I'm looking at a card, I really try and look at how it would benefit, what it does, and you're only going to see this card in a robot deck. So a lot of people that will look at this card as just a whole, be like, wow, this is like a 2-star card, robots are not going to be that good. It might be true. It might be like robots are not good, which means this card just goes to the wayside and disappears forever. But in a robot deck, it's an all-star card in that robot deck because what it does very, very well. And because of it, like, you're never going to feel bad for laying it. You're always going to lay this if you're going to play robots to get additional actions, but use them to draw cards, use them to lay more cards, keep your deck cycling through and putting out those robots, which is what you want to do in that deck. So it's like it's a 4.5, really close to 5, because I don't know if there's like a robot card you could just win the game with how many actions or whatnot. So we'll see how it does. But this is like a must-have card in robots that I'm seeing so far. So I really like it. Scatterbot. So we have 4 corners, robot, awesome. 4, 2, 3, 1. Corners 1 and 3, damage to your target. Corners 2 and 4, you take damage. Okay, so a 7, you take 3 damage, your opponent takes 7 damage. Starts off with the very explosive damage first, which is good, which is very good. I mean, mind you, this card, along with Bot Launcher, could just be ridiculously good if you had explosive superiority, obviously. But like, you lay it, deal 4 damage to your opponent, then remove it before you start taking any more damage, and then it deals however much damage Bot Launcher does. So like, this in a way is a very aggressive style, especially if you come back to this one. When you play a robot card, get an additional action. You could just play this one, you still have 2 actions because it's a robot card, then lay Bot Launcher to remove it, and you still have 1 more action to do stuff with on your turns. It's in my opinion a really good buff. Mind you, you could still let it go to the 3 and only take 2 and find a way to remove it or do other things with it. For you, taking damage, like we've all discussed in tech, is a very common thing. It's nothing that it's like brand new where you're like, whoa, I don't know how it's going to work. We've already seen how it does. We have cards like Contra Bubble where there's stuff like damage prevention that we've seen from our new cards, like one of the first ones that I take a look at today. Oh my god, where is it? The Blast-Proof Defender. Like, if anything, if that's out, you could lay both of them on the same turn. Your next turn, Blast-Proof prevents the first 2. Next one, it prevents the 1. And you cycle that through, and that'll also draw you a card. So, like, those are pretty good synergies to work together. It's not too much damage you're taking, which can be mitigated really easily. I think this is just a solid card for Robot. It's like a 3.5. Because, yes, in Robot deck, it's one of the more better cards that I've seen for the Robot family, for the Robot buff family especially. And then even outside of robots, if you're not trying to do it, it's a solid damaging card that, yes, hurts you a little bit, but like I said, there's a lot of ways to mitigate damage to prevent you from even utilizing yourself getting super low to a point where having this rotate and bring you below 15 to then benefit from like a Shatter Blast or something like that. Tech has obviously seen ways to utilize those benefits to your health dropping low on your own turn. So I just think this card is a very well-made card, very versatile for what it's trying to do, where it works in a lot of tech decks essentially, but then in a robot deck it just kind of it helps it because it's a robot family card that can be used with its 4 corner buffs to stay on the field for a lot longer, to then be utilized with removing your own buffs that way. That's why it's like a 3.5. I want to say you should include this in a robot deck, but I haven't seen all of them to discern whether or not it's like a must-have for the robot deck. So that's my take on it. Alright, we have Scrap Scanner. We have a Robot Time Defend card. Awesome. Return 1 explosive buff to your hand to deal 3 damage to your target, or return 1 time buff to your hand to draw 1 card. I really like this card. I think this card has a lot of versatility. Because like if you want damage, obviously you return an explosive buff. If it's if you want to draw, you return a time buff. So it's also like one of those cards where like I was just saying before with Scatterbot, this is an explosive card. You lay Scatterbot for 4 damage, then you return Scatterbot to your hand with another robot card, mind you, to still get that with Robot Factory for the continuous actions, to then deal another 3 damage to your target. So that's 7 damage, and you have laid robot cards, so you have been getting additional actions. There are 2 different alignments, so it doesn't matter about superiority on that. I mean, even if you wanted to return a time buff, I'm not sure which time buffs we've gone through so far. But yeah, I'm sure there's some really good time buffs out there that just returning it for card draw. Mind you, there's already a lot of good time cards for card draw. So looking at this card, yes, it's versatile. Yes, it can be used in multiple ways, which really does help. But let's face it, 9 times out of 10 you're going to be returning an explosive buff to deal 3 damage to your opponent, to get that extra bit of damage, to then lay the explosive buff again next turn, to then utilize the whole like I'm laying buffs, or even return it to your hand, so then you can lay Crazed Bomber without removing that buff, and then you can lay it next turn. It could just be really well done. It could be fitting really well in an aggressive style deck, where maybe you don't want to actually turn back buffs so many times where it actually is like hurting you. You just want to return them to your hand and then lay them again to do stuff like that. So I think this is going to be a like a 3.5 card, solid build, very versatile outside of just the robot family. Obviously, you can only run it in tech because it is very specific to explosive and time, and unless you're running time very time-centric heavy in another alignment, then you're only using it for card draw, and even then, time has way better card draw than returning time buffs to your hand and do all that stuff. So I think it would be really good. I think it's like a 3.5. It's going to be a solid card to see in some decks where they are more tempo damage based, more kind of just the slow grind as opposed to just massive explosive that we have seen before. So I think it's a nice fit. It's a pretty nice fit. In draft, I mean, it's probably going to see some in draft if you start drafting a lot of mechanical cards. But obviously, if you draft it early, that essentially solidifies what you're doing in your draft. If you look at it late and you haven't done it, it's a pass card. So in draft, it's give or take, but it has a lot of versatility, a lot of value for either damage or card draw. Could be good. Then again, you also look at, why not just run Chronomoth? Chronomoth is 3 damage. It's a time. Draw 1 card along with it. You really look at that and go, okay, is Chronomoth worth just attacking, or do I want to use it for the buff return? There's a lot of back and forth on that, but I think in certain decks, one will definitely see more over the other. So it's not like one is better or one is worth. It's very situational of which deck you want to run it in. So at 3.5, I think it's going to be a good card. Scrapworks Bruiser, 6 damage, you take 6. All right, guys. So this is essentially Magma Spitter for tech. People also, it's another 6 damage card. So that includes Fumbling Alchemist, Looper, and I thought there was another one that did 6 for tech. Is there not? Is there only the 2? So this is the third one that does 6 damage in tech, which means that based on the previous meta, this is going to be a 5-star card because you're going to see it as 6 damage. It's going to replace Tyrex Mercenary as 1 more damage. It's still an explosive card, or it just replaces the Fumbling Alchemist if you don't want to discard your combo cards in those type of decks. So you don't want to risk discarding Time Collapse or Shatter Blast or stuff like that, where it's your game-ending burst damage. But like another 6 damage in tech. Are we serious, guys? Seriously? Like, come on, man. Do we need it? Really? Really? Fine. But yeah, I mean, you're going to consistently see this in almost all of tech decks, especially if they stick with the aggro. Even running Explosive now in a deck to run this and Crazed Bomber for a lot more buff removal. They didn't need it at all, but they got it, and they're super happy about it. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Let's give them more 6 damage cards. I'm sure that'll make them less aggressive. I bet you anything. Oh my god. Well, that's my evaluation. It's gonna see play. It's gonna see a lot of play. Slipscale Racer. Time, attack, no family oriented. Alright. 3 damage. If you have played a machine card this turn, gain 1 additional action. Interesting. So obviously this is only going to be seen more as a support card for machine type decks. However, I don't think this card, just based on the cards we've seen before, is going to really be run when you have really good access to cards like Blast Fueled Battery, which is a machine card in its own. So like, obviously it's an additional action, so you can do like 3 things in a turn. So maybe additional actions. That's true. They need to out aggro Mountain. I forgot about that. Oh man, you know how you out aggro Mountain? You Crazed Bomber all their Mountain Forts. That's what you do. That's what you do. No, but like I don't know how Machine is going to do with additional actions. Obviously, Robot Factory leads into you wanting to do additional actions to do a lot of things on a turn. So this one could be like, hey, I laid a machine card, and then I'll deal 3 actions, and then maybe I'll just lay another machine card. I'll use that to draw. But, I mean, like, 3 damage is 3 damage. It's a decent card. It's fine. There's way better damage, as we've seen previously. It does obviously only fit within machine style decks, or if you're laying some machine cards. I don't think it's going to have a spot over the other cards that you could be running with time. Trying to think, he's not a machine. So I mean, unless it's like very aggressive style, unless there's machine cards out there that are like, hey, this deals like 4 damage. Yeah, it's if you're trying to burst, I could see that going really well. So that's why I need to know, is there a machine card out there where it's essentially an attack card for a machine that deals damage, and then you can deal 3 more damage, and then you can Scrapworks Bruiser, like it's going to fit into that niche where it's just majorly aggression style? Or is it like, hey, I laid a machine buff 3 damage and then just do 6 damage, and hey, I got to lay a machine buff prior to this as a third action? Tech does have a lot more card draw than I'm seeing now. So maybe with all the card draw that you're getting to just consistently have large size hands, maybe the additional actions are better so that you can actually empty those cards from your hand and then draw a whole bunch more cards and then empty them all in one turn. So maybe the additional actions will get better the way more efficient card draw you have in the deck. Obviously with Chrono Moth, 3 damage draw card can't be utilized with this because obviously it's an insect, not a machine. So it's I'm just trying to evaluate it, and it really has to be evaluated on how good the machine cards are for how good that deck is going to be. Because if you are only using it for card draw, you would always run Chrono Moth as a more consistent one, which means that the reason this card was made to get that third action and to actually do something with that third action. And that all depends on, like, is the 3 damage more efficient for a third action in a turn than just laying the 2 cards you would have anyway? Chrono Angler, that's true. I mean, if you Chrono Angler for tech, obviously, Tempest is very time oriented, isn't it? So yeah, maybe you could Chrono Angler for a burst card or a damaging card to lay from the bottom, then lay this because you laid a machine card and you could do an extra 3 damage. So hey, this found its niche into Tempest, hooray! Because aggro decks need more aggression, hooray, hooray, hooray! But at the same time, would Tempest run Slipscale Racer over Chrono Moth? That's what I'm also wondering too. Because Chrono Moth is you just draw a card, and if you already have the damage in hand, well, I no, maybe you would just because it's like more of a finishing card. So maybe you would run Chrono Moth and Slipscale both for more, like I said, card draw and damage increase. So yeah, it may Deliverance. Now that you bring that to my attention, maybe this is a good fit for a more aggression style. So in which case, if it only works with Chrono Angler, though, you probably only want to run like one to get one really good turn, and then still run Chrono Moth for efficient card draw. So I'd say this card is like a 2-star, in my opinion. That is me also tunnel visioning on this, way too narrow-minded on just fitting into Tempest, how it works in Tempest. If I'm trying to go more broad spectrum, which I'm blanking that out of my mind, trying to right now, trying to fit into these other machine decks, I don't know if the third action is beneficial past just using it for Chrono Moth to draw a card. It all depends on how way more efficient your card draw engine is in the deck, where you consistently have large hands, as opposed to just needing to cycle through your deck faster. So that's why I'm giving it like a 2-star, because in my mind, it doesn't fill that niche just yet. And obviously, it only works in machine-type decks. So it's not even a card you can splice in with time into another style for card draw. It has to be played with machine cards, which are primarily in tech. So it's very limited to its own order as well. So that's kind of why it's like a 2-star card for me. Only above a 1-star because I'm giving it the benefit of the doubt that maybe in machine decks you play a lot of machines and you have enough card draw where the third action is more beneficial than drawing another card. That's where I'm going with it. And actually, on that note, Blastfield Battery is actually a machine card. So maybe this, with Slipscale Racer, Blastfield Battery, you recycle, get a much larger hand, you play Slipscale Racer, deal 3 damage, get an additional action, and lay another one of those cards. Maybe that works, but they're also both times, so you have to have time mastery. Maybe it's more for that tempo-based deck. I'm sure we'll see it. I'm sure we'll see some of it. It depends. It depends on what type of deck you're making and whether or not the third action is better than just card draw. So I hope to see it. I'm going to try it. I'm definitely going to try it. I'm going to try all these cards. All right, Tempo Meddler. Time with 2 rotation corners. When any hero's action buff would rotate during the buff phase, they instead rotate backward. This does not affect Tempo Meddler or buffs with one corner. Very interesting. Now, so you use this. Obviously, you want to try and it can be used as a defensive or aggressive style card, because if you want to use it to your advantage, it's going to be aggressive. If your opponent is trying to utilize a lot of things with like, obviously it doesn't affect combos, so you can't like unrotate Vine Lash or unrotate heavy hitting things like that. But also like rotating, maybe just Repair Bot backwards to get minor heals back to a big heal again. Rotating Scatterbot Volume 1 back so it deals like 2 damage to you, then 4 damage, and then goes back to dealing more damage to your opponent before you remove them. This is a card where it just keeps all of your buffs on the board for a few more efficient turns. Obviously, it keeps your opponent's buffs on the board as well, so you have to really know how to play this card. I feel like it's going to take a few games with this card to really find its own niche, but for what it does, I think it's a very unique style card where it affects the entire board as a whole, where it's definitely going to have a place. It doesn't have burn, so you can bring it back. What Deliverance is saying, that's really strong to splash. Use it with damage reduction or dread damage upfront buffs. Yeah, I mean, splashing this in, time, as we've seen before, time has been one of the best ones to actually splash in because of how versatile and how supportive time is as a class to rotate buffs and C+ stuff like that. So Tempo Meddler is probably another one that you're going to see splashed into a lot of other alignments outside of tech to keep their buffs on the board. Like putting this into a nature deck that already has really good, restart your action buffs, keep them on the board, could just be ridiculous. If your nature is a heavy nature deck, a heavy nature buff, splash this time in there to keep your action buffs forward so they don't expire. They just go backward on all of your damaging. I'm sticking with Beast here because I like the new Beast meta. Having those deal more damage and then go back again after 2 buffs is like, what? Like, that could be just ridiculously strong. It doesn't belong to a family, so you don't have to try and limit it to, I want to utilize this with a family benefit or stuff like that. I think it's just a really solid card with a lot of versatility to it that could be benefited in all alignments that use a very, very tech or a very buff-oriented deck. In the past, we haven't seen, obviously, tech utilize a whole lot of buffs. But, I mean, just even using this one as a defensive way, I don't know why you'd want to use it really defensively. Keeping your opponent's buffs on the board might be worse. I don't know. Maybe just like you lay this to prevent them from the Colossi Ritual Site from going off. But also at the same time, if you play it against Mountain, their Mountain Fort rotates back every time you deal damage, which would be horrible. But yeah, I mean, this card, I'm going to give it like a 4-star card. I think there's a lot of versatility to it, a lot of defensive and aggression, all mixed into one, depending on how you play it, which means that it's going to take, like I said, it's going to take a few games to figure out the right time to play it, the good turns to lay this on. But this definitely screams meme to me, just to mess with the entire board, kind of give it a whole flip-flop, essentially. But yeah, I think this card is actually gonna see a decent amount of play. I'd probably only run like 1 of it in a deck. 2 is a bit overdoing it. But because I mean, like the turn you lay it is going to have so much impact on the game that it's either going to change it for the better for you win, or you laid it at the wrong time and you should have held on to it. It's one of those where it's like 1 of is completely fine in a deck, and those type of cards that you only want 1 of in a deck are the cards that literally should change the pace of the game to give you that leg up, so that it's not a dead card. So I really like this. I'm going to go to 4-star. I think it definitely will find places in quite a few decks actually. All right, we have Time Shifter. So a machine time card. You may search your deck for a defend action card and draw it face up. If it's a tech card, you may play it without consuming an action. Oh my god. All right, guys. Let me just go ahead and say 10 times better Chrono Angler. Yeah, this card is a Chrono Angler on crack. Like, you're almost always going to search for tech cards. It's not like machine, it's not explosive or anything, it's tech. Anything orange, you're going to be able to do this stuff. Obviously, it has to be defend, so that's completely fine. But you get to search for it. And there are so many card draw defends out there now, or just healing defends, that like drawing this card means you're like, hey, I drew this, hold on. I drew this card, I'm going to use it to search for Blast Field Battery. Play Blast Field Battery. Put the cards you don't want in your hand, so it's like a consistent major big card draw. You play it to like, oh, you don't have healing in your hand. This is more healing. This is your Tyrex Fixer. This heals you for 7 when you get down low. Like, this is, yeah, it's a blacksmith for defense. It's so good because it doesn't consume an action. Obviously, the Time Shifter consumes an action. You don't get an additional action, but it's way back when we did Nature, card fetch for specific cards is extremely good. So why would Time Shifter not be an amazing card? You might even run, like, depending on how many efficient defend cards you want in there, it helps thin your deck, and you get the benefit of that second card all within one action. This card is probably going to be like a 3 of in almost every mechanical or any tech deck that runs those efficient defends. There's even if you really want to finish off a game and don't have damage, there's the Umbron unaligned defend card that's like deal 6 damage to the person with the most health. Like, yeah, it's not tech, so it, you know. Oh no, you just get to draw it, I guess, face up, so you don't get to play it. So maybe that's not that good, but then you still get to play it for 4 damage and the second action. Like, Time Shifter it's going to be a 5-star card. It fits that machine archetype where you play machine cards and get all this benefit from it really well. You get to play a second card without using a second action with it. It's defend, so it's definitely going to be another card draw or healing. It's a deck thinner without using actions. Like, this is going to have so much impact on your deck. And I've been saying before, because your cards are only 30 to 35 card deck, thinning it out to get to the cards you really want is so good in these type of games, or this type of like game archetype with limited amount of deck. Because you ask almost any professional card player out there, if your deck could only have 10 cards, and those 10 cards are the only cards you want to win the game, they would have that 10 card deck every day of the week, so that you always just get those 10 cards. So deck thinning, not using actions to lay these cards, to get your card draw or your heal at the right time, it's going to have a major impact. And I think you're going to have like 3 of these in your deck at all times, and it's like a 5-star card. This card is nuts. This card is beyond bonkers for tech. I think it's going to see like so much play, and you're never going to feel bad about playing it. All right, Tyrex Gunner, explosive 4/3/2 buff. When any other hero attacks, they take damage. Very interesting. This is kind of like Electrified Moat in Storm. Obviously more damage potential because it's 4/3 than 2. It doesn't prevent damage, so it's just, hey, if you're going to attack me, you're going to take some damage, which means that in order to remove this, they take 4 damage at least. 1 second, guys. I'm getting a little parched. Yeah, Tyrex Gunner Guard, I think, is just a solid card. It's probably going to be one of the all-stars in draft, depending on how many attack cards people draft and whatnot. They're just getting additional damage from being attacked is perfectly fine. It's damage from a card on their opponent's turn that you didn't have to do. You didn't have to waste an action to do. It's really solid damage. It's not like 2/2/2. That would have been like, you know, almost not worth it. But 4/3/2, like, it starts off with the high damaging ones, which means you don't have to lead up to it, which means you want to remove it early. Removing it after it deals like the 4/3/2 almost doesn't seem worth it after a while. And after that first attack goes off, it's like you already took the most amount of damage. So, like, it's not even that threatening of a buff target removal source, where a lot of times it's probably just going to stay out there and your opponent's going to be like, fine, I'll just take the damage for attacking. And you're like, cool, now I'll attack, attack, attack. So, I mean, it's like a 3.5 maybe in my eyes. It has a lot of versatility to it. Obviously, it's just, you know, of course, it's one of those cards that's really nice to put in the main deck and then splash out if you're going against a very buff damage-oriented deck or something like that, or, you know, anything where they don't do damage through attacks. Because obviously even attack abilities trigger this as well, because it's if you get attacked. It's just a nice, solid card. It helps with that tempo aggression that I've been trying and saying that I hope the tech does, where you're doing damage outside of just really big burst turns. You're doing it in a more cyclical way, the way kind of nature has been in the past, where it's just continuous damage, where it's just your opponent hurts themselves so that you can hurt them more later. I think it's a solid card. I don't think it's a card that makes any deck better by adding it to it. But I mean, I do think it's just a nice, solid buff. And they really need those kind of damaging stuff in buff outside of the whole, like, Colossi Cannon, wait till you do one big burst turn. 9 damage with 4 guaranteed. True, true. But I mean, it doesn't have a family that belongs to you, so you can't manipulate it with machines or robots. I mean, if you run 3 of it in your deck, yeah, then your opponents just be like, well, I'm never going to attack you again, and it kind of helps you build up that wall. But at the same time, as we've discussed before, if you're running these in a tech deck and you run Crazed Bomber, you're most likely going to end up removing it, and it's going to be a continuous one where it sits out there. So it's like, in tech, I like where it is, but because Crazed Bomber is always a thing, the potential of you just removing it before you actually get a benefit from it is one of those things where it's like, is it always guaranteed 4 damage? Your opponent could just not attack you and lay buffs that you have to remove, and then because of doing so, you are inevitably removing your Tyrex Gunner Guard on your own without it doing anything. So if it was outside of tech, this would be amazing, because tech is the only one where you have to remove your own buffs to remove buffs. But like, as the games go, this card will be really good if the way the meta is going and there's a lot of attacks. This card will be an all-star. If the way the meta goes and everyone's just laying more buff-centered decks, this card isn't going to be a whole lot more efficient than any of your other cards are. That's kind of why I'm giving it a 3.5. Because, like I said, if the way I've been seeing it, a lot more decks have been running a lot of just buff damage. So I mean, your opponent, like I said, could just not attack and lay efficient buffs, where then you Crazed Bomber and are forced to just remove Tyrex Gunner Guard, and then they can attack you for free. So that's where I'm viewing it. If you can have your own opinion. This is my opinion. Like I said, disclaimer at the beginning of the video, but I completely understand where you're coming from. I could be very underrating this, depending on how the meta develops. If you're going against all attack, this is an amazing card that you are going to want to run 3 of to prevent your opponent from overrunning you and help you dwindle them down. So I can see both sides of the coin. Alright, Tyrex Tuner. So a mechanical defend card. Take 2 damage. If your last discarded card is a robot or machine attack or defend card, apply its effect with +2 damage and healing. Treat it as an applicable attack or defend as applicable. This card, I think, is going to be really good. So obviously, you take 2 damage. Woo, you took 2 damage. Cool. But then it's like, if you're playing it in a robot or machine heavy oriented deck, especially with all the robot or machine attack and defend cards that I've been seeing as of late, this one could be really good. Like, you could use this with Time Shifter. Oh no, because Time Shifter, you would play the card over Time Shifter, so I guess you can't play it with that. But you can play it with Blast Field Battery, again, if you need more card draw. You can play it with C25 Combat Warper. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff that I feel like you could do with this card. And then it's also like it apply its effect with +2 damage and healing. So, like, I'm trying to think here, because does it add the +2 damage and healing no matter what it does? Because then the take 2 damage would kind of seem almost null and void. Because like, yeah, you take 2 damage, but then whatever the card does, you're adding +2 damage and healing. Or is it just like, if it's a damage card, you add more damage to it. If it's healing, you add more healing to it. The way it's worded is a little weird. I think it's only like, if it does damage, it will increase damage. If it does healing, it'll increase the healing. But yeah, in a robot or machine type deck, I feel like this is going to be a really good card to get better value out of your already good cards that you're going to lay. I mean, Malfunctioning Sentry, you could use it back-to-back with this to remove 2 of your own buffs and make your opponent move 4 cards back if you're going for more of a controlling style. I see this card being played really well in that new archetype. I'd probably only run like 2, maybe 1 on it. So let's see, it's regardless. So if it's defend, it negates it. If attack, damages you both for 2 plus the effect of the card. But wouldn't, if it was healing, wouldn't it also get the +2 healing? He said, actually, I'm wrong. So I mean, we also got to look here and see what kind of machine or robots. So let me. We'll take a slight pause on this to just look and see what the machine and robot cards have for attack and defend. See which ones heal. Blast Bot is an attack, so that'd be more damage. We have C-25 Combat Warper, which is more damage. We have Chrono Warper, which is now a robot, which is healing. Okay, McRizzle, perfect. The plus 2 damage and healing doesn't apply unless the card has healing or damage to it. So it only applies what it already has. That's exactly what I thought it would read. But the way it's worded confuses me a little. I don't know if I was the only one confused by it, but I was like, do I just get that? Because then what's the point of taking 2 damage? That's really weird. You could Scrap Scanner to return another explosive buff to increase the damage from Scrap Scanner. There is one with a W coming up that's a robot that does 3 damage, so that would be increased by damage. So I mean, it looks like there's actually a decent amount of more robot than machine cards that deal damage or have healing. So this card could be fine. Mind you, there is a lot, like Blast Field Battery, you don't even care about the plus 2, you just get more card draw out of it. Clockwork Construct is a robot card now, so putting another, swapping buffs back and forth could just be another good card that you want to utilize. Demolition Bot is apparently now a robot, so you could remove another buff and deal 7 damage with this card. That would be really good. Yeah, I mean, there's some pretty good stuff for robots and machines now that it looks like it. That Tyrax Tuner is going to be a really good tech card. But mind you, it is situational. Obviously, in these type of decks, you're probably going to run more buff cards. So getting an attacker defend, at least a specific one, having 3 of these might be overdoing it. I might only have like 1 or 2 in the deck to really utilize the ones that I want to kind of synergistically combo with, because it looks like a lot of them are explosive or maybe even time. So having a machine one to go along with that could be good back and forth with a superiority type of thing. So, I mean, this card is just, it's going to be a good card. It doesn't even have burn, so you can bring it back if you really want to get more value out of it. But just being able to get double an effect on a card that you've already laid to get a better effect from it could just be really good. And I could actually see this card being run in, oh, Jesus Christ. I could see this card being run in my Anzi the Mender Tower deck that I have built with Crumbling Tower, and then use Demolition Bot on one of your Crumbling Towers, and then use Tyrax Tuner to activate Demolition Bot again for like 7 damage, so that's 11 damage after all of your heavy hitting buffs go. Do I think the format will be more aggressive? I think the format right now already is aggressive. So trying to be more aggressive than already aggressive format could be difficult. I have seen people win on turn 5, so I don't really know how the game can get more aggressive than winning before turn 5. But I mean, those decks have only been like. Even buffs of decks to be over aggressive. Yeah, I mean, you're still going to see aggro. Whether, like I said, whether it's more aggressive than how aggressive the state already is, I don't think it's going to have a bigger aggressive impact. I just think it'll be like a more well-rounded aggressive. Especially with Beast being a really good archetype that seems very aggressive. I still think that aggressive is going to be the top format to build a deck around, which is sad because I'm much more of a control player. I love kind of long games where you feel interactive as just supposed like, hey, I killed you in turn 5, cool, let's start game 2, and I'm like, come on, man, I didn't have a chance to do anything. But anyway, back to the review. But yeah, we can have this discussion continue while we're doing this. Also, this is awesome. I love talking to you guys about it. I love talking about the meta. But yeah, that's my view on Tyrax Tuner. I think it's like I want to say it's a 4-star card. It really helps the robot and machine archetype. It's not anything that having it in more than like 1 or 2 will break the deck or make it better. It's just, it's a really good card that emphasizes this new archetype that they're going for, and it's going to be a really fun deck to manipulate in different ways to just get better benefits from it. It's going to be a fun card to play, and I'm giving it 4 stars for the tech specific decks. Alright, we have Unstable Scavenger, robot buff. First corner's clunky, then we have 2, 2, and 5. So defendability, draw rotation cards. Draw 3 cards, that's really good. Corners 2 and 3 reduce damage received by that much, and then corner 4 is take damage. I think Unstable Scavenger is going to be amazing in tech. Well, not only do you have a lot of um, ways to remove your own buffs, like I said, demolition bot, bot launcher. You can even, oh, I guess you can't really return this. Well, I guess you can. You can return this buff or rotate it backwards. But like defend ability, you draw 3 cards, and then you have damage reduction, and then you just find a way to remove this card when there's so many ways to remove cards. I think this card is going to be amazing. I think it's going to be a really well fun card to use, and I want to say that I mean, you can use this outside of the robot, the new archetype they're trying to build with it. It is a robot card, so you're most likely going to want to try to play it in that. But in a robot deck, I think this is a card that you're going to want to have like 3 of in there for card draw alone, and then it just has a buff for robot that you can utilize for throwing or dismantling or doing what you want with the robot cards. I think it's one of the better robot buffs that I have seen that you are going to want to run like 3 of in a deck just because you want more efficient robot buffs. And I think this will do it. I think this is going to be a really good one. I'm going to give it like I'm going to give this like 3.5 to 4 stars because it has card draw, it has damage reduction, and the damage you take at 5 could just be null and void if you play the repair bot on the same turn of it. This will deal 5 to you. A repair bot will heal for your 5. Almost null and void. You got to draw 3 cards, have some damage reduction, and heal for the 3. Like with back and forth and all these other cards, I think this is going to be a nice solid card that is very easily to be removed on your own in your own way to do it. So I think this is like a 3.5 to 4 star card. See, we have do I think control decks could ever beat aggro? Yes and no. I don't think tempo decks can outbeat aggro, but I think like if you're playing the extreme long game like a Granite does really well against aggro. Granite almost shuts down aggro because it has so much healing and so much damage prevention. But then again, you also have to draw your heals at the right time. I've played decks where I got overrun by Dolo while I was playing Granite and I just couldn't do anything. So it's back and forth. But control does, at least certain control decks do really well against aggro, I think. It just depends on which ones you're playing. All right, we have Wrench Juggler, robot, machine card, attack, 3 damage. This is the one I was talking about where you can play this robot and utilize it again. This one even has burn, so it's like not even bringing it back. You can utilize it from the graveyard to play it. 3 damage. If you have played another mechanical card this turn, move 1 item card from your discard pile to your hand. This card, guys, is going to be nuts. I've already talked about how graveyard recursion is a thing, but with how many new good items they have in here and how much now item destruction this game has put into it now, getting your items back from the discard pile is going to be nuts. It's going to be really good, and I think just running this card as a one of is completely fine. Even not in a tech deck. Obviously, you have to have mechanical cards to do it, but you don't necessarily need to run this in a robot deck. It's just 3 damage, and then if you play mechanical, you can get one of your items back, which is all you really want to do with this card. You don't want to like try and utilize it in a different way for damage or playing robots. It's primarily a card used for getting your item back that someone removed. Someone took their card turn to remove it. So then you do this and you get your item back. So it completely nullifies it. So you can keep doing that fun stuff with your item. And depending on how what items you're running in that, sometimes you detrimentally need that item to continue laying the other cards. I know right now there's a lot of items out there that are just you use the item for the good item ability. So you don't care if it was removed because you don't really utilize that color. You just use the item for its ability. But this card is going to be a very dominant card in tech if you're running a weapon. If you're running a weapon, you are auto-including this card at least one of. If you are not running a weapon, there's no reason to run this card at all. So like unless your deck has a weapon, don't even think about adding this card. If it does have a weapon, this is a 5-star card to go along with that weapon. It's the only one that I've seen in tech so far that can return an item to your hand or return any real card to your hand that's not just played again from your graveyard. So this one I think is incredibly powerful for tech. Mind you, it is mechanical, so you probably won't see it outside of tech a whole lot. And if you're running it outside of tech, you just lost the mechanical item to use this to return that mechanical item back. So it's like you're only going to run this in tech anyway, so it's not even worrisome to think about it that way. But yeah, I think this card is going to see some really good play. And depending on like what mechanical buffs or mechanical cards you're already laying, which we've seen a decent amount of good ones. like the back to the blast field battery is a mechanic or is a or no, it's not mechanical. That's machine. Mechanical is just any mechanical. So I mean, yeah, you're gonna love playing this card. So that also once again leads me to believe that it has to be used in a mechanical superiority deck. So maybe it doesn't get a 5-star, maybe it's a 4-star, because it has to be run in a superiority deck. Otherwise, you can't really get your item back. So your hero has to be specifically utilized, which could be sad if you want to use a hero that's better in a certain deck, and then you can't play this to bring the item back. So maybe it's not a 5-star, maybe it's a 4-star, because it does require you to have mechanical superiority if you're going to lay this card to get an item back. So down to a 4-star, but it is going to see play if you run items. Man, people are talking in chat. This is awesome! Yay! All right, on to the next one. They seem to be talking about Dolo. I'll read this later when I watch the video. It's awesome. We have a time machine buff, which is 3 dormant corners up to 12. Whoa, that's awesome. This buff is dormant unless you have a combo buff in play. A little less awesome. Corner 4, damage to your target. Now, this one could be pretty interesting. I know there's already a lot of ways to speed up your buffs, and you can speed up dormant buffs as far as I'm aware. Dormant doesn't mean they can't be rotated out or anything. It's just, unless the card specifically says this can't be rotated, yep, it can be found at time. Perfect. So you lay this, and your opponent's like, well, why remove that? And then you found out a time it to its last corner. Then you lay a combo buff, and then next turn this just goes off to 12. And you've already helped rotate it along the lines when you didn't have a combo buff out in play. So I mean, thinking about it that way, this could be really fun. It's also an actual good time buff that you can use with cards that we have seen before, such as Scrap Scanner. So like once this buff goes off for 12, you can return this with Scrap Scanner and then lay it again, and you can draw a card with Scrap Scanner because it's actually a good time buff to have out in play. So this one, I feel like running more than one is a bit overdoing it because its rotation is very conditional, but it essentially does give me a lot of hope that that tech order, if you're running cards like this, is going to be running a lot more tech buffs as opposed to Time Collapse, Shattering Blast, stuff that is just high efficient card draw and damage. Because every tech deck that I've seen out there has run Time Flicker, Time Collapse, Shattering Blast, the 2 explosive one that deals 11 damage and you take 2. Like, it's always running just, and Nitro Heal. Like, those are the consistent 5 all across the board, and not a single one of those is a buff. And I feel like tech has some pretty decent, some good combo buffs out there that it just have not been utilized because they're buffs. And why would you want to run buffs in a deck where your buff removal removes a buff? It just doesn't make sense to me. So that's why I'm hoping with cards like this, it leads you more into building a deck around some of these combo buffs that we haven't seen, or some of them we're going to see in this new order. So this card, it gives me a lot of hope for the revitalization other than an aggro deck. And maybe you run 2 just to make sure, like, if they do remove it, knowing that you're going to have combo buffs out in play, you can lay a second one, or like just having 2 consistently being able to rotate and stuff like that with it going out. 12 damage is a lot of damage. Mind you, Colossi Cannon is 1 less, and that rotates all on its own, completely fine. It's an explosive over a time. They're both machine buffs as well. So like, it's one of those you kind of have to. Oh, it can't be found in time unless you have a combo buff. Really? So dormant does mean you cannot rotate it at all, even outside of whatever its rotational conditions are? Is that what dormant means? I thought it was just like this buff doesn't have any effect, so you could rotate it to the 12, but because it's dormant, it doesn't do anything. Maybe that's just, maybe I don't fully understand dormant that well. But yeah, I mean, comparing it to Colossi Cannon, that rotates all on its own. You don't need a combo buff out in play. It doesn't even do anything the first 3 corners, and you have to wait till 12. So like, it looks really cool. I'm really happy they made it. I love the concept of it, and it's going to be, it makes you want to play more combo buffs as opposed to just combo attack and defend cards. But then again, at the same time, like, why not just run Colossi Cannon? It does 1 less damage. Mind you, yes, you take a few extra damages as it's going, but you don't need 1 of 5 cards in your deck to be out in play. They could just remove to have this actually go off and do something. So as much as I love it and as much as I love the concept, I want to give this like a 2.5. Just because the condition to rotate, if what Mick Rizzle is saying is true, you can't rotate this while it's dormant. Having it finally go off is going to be so difficult to do because your opponents are always going to want to remove your combo buffs, and in which case means that you want to have all 5 of your combos be combo buffs, and a lot of games you really only want to have like maybe 2 or 3 combo buffs, and then again you have to have this out before you lay a combo buff because the combo buff could rotate out before it finally gets to its final corner. And with cards that are just more effective and just damaging wise to finish out a game, it's better just to run some combo attacks to have that game-ending card. So I mean, format rules state it can't be rotated. I can imagine. Yeah, no, I can see that. Yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, you said if you splash in, what is it, Spirit to put in Spectral Web, have some fun. Spectral Web or Spirit also aligns you to Old Oak. You can restart your action buffs. Why not? You know, stupid things like that. There's a whole lot of synergies that you can try and create with this, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. But, I mean, as I was saying, I'm going to go 2.5 on it. It's a very well-designed card, but it's so conditional to finally hit its quota when you could just be running cards like Colossi Cannon. Because the damage output is 1 less or 1 more damage, but you don't have to wait for a specific card. But, I mean, it's a worse Colossi Cannon. I hate to say it. Alright, we're on to the items, guys. On to the items. Here we go. Alright, we got Fluximo. We have the time. Burn. Okay, so it has burn. This is the first weapon we've seen with burn. Alright, interesting. Defendability. All heroes move the bottom card of their discard pile to their hand. Now, that is a sick item. This is definitely a replace for Flynamo since it got banned. So that's obviously a replacement. This one, I mean, yes, it helps your opponent, but a lot of the times, it's consistent card recursion. So if you're not running a whole lot of burn cards, then this card is going to be amazing. Obviously, it can't be brought back with the Wrench Juggler because it has burn, so you can't bring it back with that. But being able to just consistently bring back cards from your discard pile to your hand, obviously, once you hit the burn card, once a burn card is on the bottom, it does not skip that card. So once burn is on the bottom, this item essentially does nothing. But the designers told you they wrote this to replace Flynamo was definitely their intention. That's incredible. That is well, Fluximo, Flynamo. Boy, I wonder where the name came from. Oh no, I love it. I think this is a great card. But yeah, like once you hit that burn card on your discard pile or on your opponent's discard pile, this card essentially does nothing. So I feel like with how strong its ability is, also putting that limitation that, like, okay, once you hit burn, now it's just an item that gives you time benefit. Not even superior time, just that. Is completely fine. I'm A-okay with that, because that means, like, okay, my bottom card is burned, this item is done for me now, I don't care what you do with it. It's used its purpose. It has used its purpose very well. And, I mean, especially think about it this way, if your opponent, like, removes one of your buffs really early on in the game, their bottom card of their discard pile is going to be that burn card that they cannot bring back. So you only get benefit out of this as long as you don't lay burn cards, and your opponent gets nothing. So it's consistent 100% benefit if you played properly, if you built a deck to make sure you utilize this really well. And, I mean, there's no reason to run 2 because this has burn, so once you get that second one out there and Fluximo goes to the bottom, then both of them do nothing. They're only just both there. So, I mean, I think this card is going to see a lot of play. It's definitely going to be a card utilized in every alignment. Like I said, Graveyard Recursion is starting to be a really big detrimental thing that I think this card alone is going to help a lot of decks that want to bring cards back from their discard pile that just it couldn't before. They didn't have access to Root Singer or Chimcho Infiltrator or anything else that brought stuff back. So yeah, I think this card is going to be it's like a 5-star weapon. It's going to see a lot of play. You're definitely going to see a lot of meme stuff with that. I cannot wait to try this weapon out. But yeah, I would definitely get your hands on at least one of these because there's, like I said, no reason to run 2. So if you get your hands on one, scan it into the game, you can use it in all your decks. Definitely this item is going to see play. Almost 100% guaranteed. Time is one of the best ones to tech in because you have access to like Warp Toad and all this other fun stuff that doesn't have burn. It's buff removal without burn, so it's going to be really fun. You could essentially not run Crazed Bombers and run Warp Toads and run Blast Bots for like conditional buff removals, and just not run Crazed Bombers in a deck like this, so you're not detrimental to removing your own buffs, and then have no other burn cards in your deck and just use Fluximo and keep recycling your deck to get all these really good benefits. I think that would be a really fun, really interesting way to build this deck, and I can't wait to try it. Just have no burn cards in a deck and run Fluximo, just to see how stupid my opponent is for like not getting the benefit the entire game that I will. I think it's great. I love this. I love this item. It's awesome. All right, next one. Portable Turret. Explosive Superiority. All right, this is definitely the one you want. Superiority then, because explosive you want to be able to back-to-back damage. It's very aggressive style. Deal 2 damage to your target at the start of your turn if you have 15 or less health. This is also a really well-designed weapon. Once again, it fits that tech archetype where, hey, you know, if you're at 14 or less health, you're going to get a benefit from something. And obviously, this is your favorite, or was it Portable Turret, or was it Fluximo Deliverance that your favorite Kindred weapon? If it's this one, I 100% agree with you. This is awesome. I love this weapon. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's definitely in like my top 5. But I mean, no, this one is amazing. The turret. Oh my god, this is so much fun. Like, I don't even know what the third time one is, or third mechanical one, but like all of them are so good. Or there's compared to the other alignments, like all 3 of these weapons just have really good benefits to them. And this one, like I said, it's not even an ability that you do. If you're just below 15 health, it pokes them for 2, which in a very good in a lot of tech decks, being below 15 health is completely fine. It's the new archetype they're trying to push where it's 10 or less. That's the one I have problems with, because if you're 10 or less, there's way more ways of dying in that one. That it's just once you're at 10, you're like, oh my word, I need to defend. I need to get myself out of the kill range from, like, you know, Shatter Blast that is 14. But like if you're at 15 or less health, you don't feel that bad. You don't feel like you're about to die. You need to be like in that 10 to 15 range to get those benefits and everything like that. So I feel like this is an amazing weapon. It gives you superiority over tech or over explosive, which means that adding it into a more aggressive style deck also to get the explosive damaging cards that we have seen is amazing, that you can utilize those really well. It gives you superiority so you can lane both in the same turn. It's consistent damage. Grim Glider was played not only because the shadow cards were amazing cards to have in there and Abyss Tentacles were consistent buffs, but hey, welcome to the... Thanks for subscribing, Deliverance. Thanks man, for that. But yeah, I think that this card is going to see a lot of play. This is just a really, really good, well-designed item that already it like takes what a archetype wanted to do, and then just puts it in an item so that everyone can do it in a small sense of the way. And I think it's really good. I think this is like, I want to say it's like a 4-star weapon. It's nothing where it's like gonna break the game. Yes, it's superiority. Yes, it has a really good effect. It's just benefit. Maybe it's like a 4.5. I don't think it's a 5-star weapon. I think there's very few 5-star weapons. Maybe like Fluximo is a 5-star weapon, and I think Flame Claws are 5-star weapons, because those weapons you build a deck around those ones to get the benefit from it. Portable Turret, I feel like the archetype's been out there for so long. There's so many ways to build a deck to get below 15 health that this one you don't build the deck around it. This one there's already a deck built. You just kind of plop this one in there and it just helps it a little better. So it's yeah, Crystal Core is a 5. Crystal Core is a 5-star weapon. That one it's so good in any deck you put it in, just for the ability that you put it in, because it's consistent value. Crystal Core is like a 5-star. That one is so stupid. I hate that card, but I love that card. There's so many love-hate cards I have in this game. I should do just a YouTube video on my love-hate of this game. But no, I think this is like a 4-star weapon where it feels really nice to have. It's not something that you actually want to blacksmith for, because it doesn't have an effect until later in the game when you're below health. So just plopping this in a 1-of in a deck is completely fine without even running blacksmith. When you draw it, you'll be like, okay, cool, I drew it, I lay it. And you're at 16, you're like, okay, well, you know, you can put me below 15 now if you really want to. And it'll just, you know, slowly tick you down with me. We'll have some fun with it. But it's nothing where, like, it wins you the game or there's a lot of cards that go along with it. It fits a really nice niche archetype in this, where putting this into other decks like it could also just be really good for more kind of poke consistent damage at a low health. So I think it's a really good, well-designed card. I'm sorry to say this, but I'd actually like to see more items like this, where they take an entire archetype of what a alignment is trying to do and just kind of give it like a little weapon that does the same thing. I think Storm did that a little bit. Nature, I feel like, fell to the wayside quite a bit. But yeah, I really like this card. I really do. I think this is a really well-designed weapon. And it's going to see some... Oh god, please don't put this in Dolo. Please don't. It's so good in Dolo, but don't do it. They don't need more aggression. They don't need the poke damage for anything, and they go below 15 on their own. Don't put this in Dolo. Don't be that guy. I mean, you're going to do it. I'm going to do it. But don't be that guy. Come on, man. Come on. Come on. All right, Wrecking Gun. So it's the mechanical buff. Defend ability. Remove one of your location buffs to draw 2 cards. This is really good. We've already discussed that location is going to be one of those families. It's very spread out around the meta. It's obviously very heavy in the mountain. They already have like location heroes for mountain. So like, I'm trying to think of how many location cards there are in tech now. Let me take a look here quick. There is... Ooh, wrong one. There are 5 location buffs in tech, which is fine. I mean, outside of tech, there's a total of 41 location buffs, which means there's a lot of versatility for location buffs. And it looks like it's very well rounded. I'm just kind of scrolling through the page. There's a variety of rainbow colors here. I mean, it's not very heavy aligned on one thing. So this is a very good weapon to splash into a lot of other decks. Locations is a very versatile one, and it's card draw, guys. It's not like remove it to deal 3 damage. If it was that, no one would care about it. No one would do anything. But it's card draw. You remove a location buff to draw cards, which is incredibly important in every deck, no matter which one you play. So, like, getting this out is always going to be good, depending on it. Even if you run like 3 location buffs, just remove those for card draw after they've done whatever they're supposed to be doing, after they've done the damage prevention, or like they're below a certain amount of health and the buff stops doing anything. I think it's like Colossi Skybeam is now a location card, so removing that to draw 2 cards if your opponent's already low to get more aggression on the game is phenomenal. I think it's a great, well-designed weapon. It's nothing that really breaks the game, nothing that really like you need to put it in a certain archetype. It's very well-rounded. I think it's like a 3.5. It's right up there with Portable Turret, where Portable Turret is like a 4-star weapon. This is like a 3.5. It's a little less than below because obviously it's not aggression. It doesn't help you win the game, but it's card draw. It does require you to have location buffs in your deck for you to be able to lay it, as opposed to just the health, which everyone has health. But I mean, card draw, guys. You're only going to run this if you have at least like maybe 5 or 6 location buffs. You don't need to get this out right away unless like all your location buffs are your early game cards, and you do it like that. And it's just card draw. It's really good card draw to remove stuff that has already done its purpose. So I think this card is going to see quite a bit of play, even if not just for its ability, but then you can also splash in the mechanical cards. Like the, oh my god, I'm just trying to think of this. This card is going to replace Spin Blade in Granite for sure. 100% for sure. Putting Wrecking Gun in Granite with all the location buffs that it already has for defense, remove them to draw cards. Oh my god. If you guys don't know, I got my kind of reputation from running Granite. Granite's the deck that I used to win the qualifiers at the Middleton tournament last year for Gen Con. It's the one I used to win the Delivery Crab tournament the first time they did it. It's the deck I used to get into the top 4 at the Last Chance qualifiers. I mean, putting this in Granite with how many location buffs it's going to be gross. And just now looking at this card, it already runs mechanical cards, so it's a good fit. It's a perfect fit. I cannot wait to try this. Grimjow said, whatever happened to Jade Wing, the soul weapon in nature? The Jade Wing, along with the other items for Astral, were meant to be released with toys. How Boulder and Jax and all those ones got released for toys. Because the RPG game hasn't been doing so well, and the toys were only bought for the cards, they literally scrapped those 2 alignments for toys and never released them. So any toy thing you see for nature and any toy thing you see for Astral, whether it be the hero or the 3 items that went along with it, all got scrapped. They all got scrapped. They decided to not release them, to focus on the card game, not put out any more toys, because the toys weren't selling as what the cards were, and obviously those cards were busted. Like, they were so broken. But yeah, they didn't release them because the toys didn't do well, and they were focusing on the toys at that point. And then they're just like, well, we'll scrap them and focus on the card game. Which I actually found out, little side note, I'll try and edit inside of the video maybe. The game actually focused heavily on the RPG elements, and then on like people who worked at PlayFusion decided to kind of like see if they had a card game while deciding all of the combo mechanics in the RPG. And they're like, man, we could actually make this into maybe a card game. So they spent their lunch breaks on the weekends developing this game, the card game for it, and then went to the heads and say like, "Hey, let me pitch this idea. How does it work?" And they said, "Yeah, roll with it, roll with it." And then the card game blew up 10 times faster than the RPG did, and so they switched their focus to now do the card game over the RPG and the toy-wise. So yes, because of that, the RPG game did not take off, which means that those two alignments did not get toys released for them when they were releasing the other toys for the other alignments. So that's why Jadewing is not a card. It was a far-lung or mountain. Trying to think. What cards did I run in Mountain? I ran Rickety Mine in Granite for healing a little bit. But yeah, Mountain Fort, even Shattered Volcano, if you really need card draw and you're not getting it, you could toss a Shattered Volcano down. It does tend to be their end game, which then if you rework with all the new cards and stuff like that, you can put 3 Shattered Volcanoes in there to use it for card draw as opposed to waiting for the late game. But yeah, I think just even removing one of your buffs to get 2 card draws, even if you use the ability like once or twice, your main benefit for Granite is to literally just get you to the end game, where you can win in like 3 turns as soon as your deck is empty. So even if it's just you use this for draw 2 cards, that's really good. That's really good. I mean, I ran Focus Chamber in that deck. I ran 3 of it. A, yes, you got to put a buff out, but B, I usually most it to just draw cards, to just draw 1 for 1. I used it so many times for that. That just removing a location buff to draw 2 is going to be really good. I can almost guarantee you it's going to help you speed up your Granite deck to get to the cards you want to get to faster and to empty your deck faster. So that's I'm going to try and run it in Granite. I'm going to see how it does. Maybe it's a wrong idea. I don't know, but it's even if you remove like a Mountain Fort that's on its last tick before your opponent can remove it to draw 2 cards, I'll do it. I'll do that every day of the week. And then you can also use the Geode Hatchling to put it back in. So like you remove a location, like you remove your Mountain Fort that's on its last corner, then Geode Hatchling to put it back into play. Amazing synergy. Amazingly stupid synergy. So yeah, I'm gonna give this like a 3.5. I think it's a well-rounded card. Works well in location buffs. But if you're just using it for the mechanical, you can use the Spin Blade, or you can use the Shield one. I can't think of the card now because I'm bad with card names. But you can just use those over this one. But I mean, this is a really nice card for what it does for fitting that location. I think it's a really fun card. It's going to see play. All right, on to the combos, guys. The best part about this game is the combos. All right. First one we have is Anti-Magic Pulse. Forge Wall. Thank you, Gribjow. Alright, Anti-Magic Pulse. Gain 1 additional action when this enters play. Draw rotation cards. All other heroes' buffs are dormant. Now, this card reminds me a lot of the new Mountain one called Rupture. When it comes into play, you get an additional action. Obviously, their buffs are dormant for 2 turns instead of 1. But you also get to draw a card on your next turn, too. So it's like, it's a little, in my opinion, a little worse than Rupture, but the dormant lasts for 1 extra turn, which could be all the more benefit to it. This card, obviously, really cheap to pay for, explosive and time, which is, not unfortunately, but where all of your main card builds for like a Tempest build or oh my God, what's her name that you draw 2 cards and your opponent draws 1? Zuna, thank you, Zuna. I got it all on my own. Yay! Those 2 are the ones that you run quite a bit of, that you utilize the most of in your deck. Could be a decent sideboard for buff heavy decks. I mean, yeah, it could be a really good sideboard. Or I mean, you even could probably run this in. I'd say you'd run it in the main deck. For it, I mean, if you think about it this way, this isn't used anywhere other than when you're about to win. And you use it to make sure late game, obviously your opponent's wasted all their buff removal or done stuff like that. Because, I mean, if you're playing the very aggressive stuff like that, you play this, your opponent has already used, or hasn't had a chance to use any buff removal because you don't run any buffs. So it's immediately going to get killed. So this is one of those things that you think about and you go, okay, I probably should run this in a more buff-centric deck because it's not really going to fit that really aggressive style that we've seen before, and there's already much better combos for that archetype anyway. So, like, this is the one that you lay late in the game for that final push after your opponent has wasted his buff removal, and you play this out as your opponent's going dormant. You get additional action, so you can, you know, use your Tyrax. Oh, I keep using my mouse wheel. So you can use your Tyrax Bruiser or your Battleworks Bruiser or whatever it's called to deal 6 damage, and then your next turn you get, you know, 12 more damage in for like 18, and your opponent can't do anything. You can get to draw a card out of it too. So this card, I think, it's going to see play in the new meta. In the past meta, I don't think this is ever going to see play. Just because, like I said before, those decks never ran any buffs. Yes, it looks like it would be a perfect fit for that deck, but like I said, this is the buff you wait for late game when your opponent starts really defending up and you have to get that final push in. But also late game, your opponent hasn't used any buff removal because you haven't laid any buffs. So it just immediately gets killed, and all you got out of it was an additional action when it entered play, and that was it. That was all you got out of it. So as the archetype changes to a more buff-centered deck, I feel like this one is going to find a much more prominent place in that archetype. And in that case, this is one of those combos that you lay to win the game. So I think it's like a 5-star combo. Makes your hero's buffs dormant for 2 turns. So they literally have to find a way to remove it, or they just sit there with no way to defend themselves. They have to heal themselves. They have to do something. And then you get a card draw, so even if you lay this and don't do anything, you eat that additional action, so you could draw 2 cards after the combo. Then you draw a third one for the next turn, and you have 3 cards to try and kill them that turn. So I think this is a really good card. It's a combo like almost on the level of Shatter Blast, where it's like 14 damage. It's a combo that you look at and go, this is a game-ending combo. It's a combo that I want to lay at the end of the game to win. And you should only have like two, maybe 3 combos like that in your deck. The other combos should be more support, should be helping, which is why Time Flicker was so good and Nitro Heal was in there, because they were just helpful combos to pay for stuff and to draw you cards to get to your game-ending combos. But this is definitely one of the game-ending combos that in a more buff-centric deck is going to have a major presence. Especially if your buffs are like, hey, you know, I have to wait till they all rotate and all that stuff, and they's like, you saw those coming, so they lay down walls. Then you lay this, so their walls do nothing, and they just can't do anything. I think it's a really, really strong combo. Really easy to pay for in late in game when you've already spent all your other cards and have minimal cards to pay for combos. I think it's a perfect card for a late game buff centered deck, and I can't wait to play it. I can't wait to try it out. It's going to be an amazing impact on the game. All right, next one we have is Blast Sequence. 5, 4, 3, 2. Damage to your target, you take 1. 2 explosives. This card is also going to be an amazingly fun card. This is a card that doesn't end the game, but it's a combo buff for 4 turns that is primarily explosive. There is a beautiful mythic hero out called Grand Architect Halavar, where if you have 6 gravity cards under your hero, your explosive combos deal 3 more damage. I think it's 3 more damage. Yeah, so like this being 4 corners, it essentially reads this card deals 12 more damage. And it's all explosive, so it's easy to pay for. This card is a perfect style for a more buff-centric tech deck. It's really nice to lay early game because it puts major pressure right in the beginning of the early game. Really easy to pay for, 2 explosives. So like you can pay your really explosive action cards, put them back into your deck to do this really early in the game. Your opponent will be like, okay, well, I have to remove this now. Blow their buff removal on just this one good combo buff. And then you can use your other buffs later in the game, like if you're playing more robot or stuff like that. If you're going into that style, this is just a really good one to lay. In mid-game, it's a really good damage presencing buff. It can be utilized by certain heroes because it's only one-centric. The other one that you have to look at compared to, I think, is the... was it Overwhelming Blast, I think is the card that it's called. Yeah, Overwhelming Blast. It's 11 damage, you take 2. I mean, obviously this is 13 damage, but it's a buff, so you can utilize the buff aspect of it a lot better. It's not meant to be a game-ending card, so don't look at it that. It's meant to be just a very good pressure card to add onto your opponent. And because it is a buff, you can utilize it with, like, Demolition Bot and all this other stuff. Well, I think Demolition Bot is only action buffs, maybe. think it's only action buffs. But I mean, there's a lot of ways to remove it with buffs to, do stupid things like that with it. So I think this card is going to be like, I put it as like a 3.5. It's a really solid, well-made card. It's very different from Overwhelming Blast. It does kind of the same thing, but in a different way. So they're both pretty interchangeable, depending on what deck archetype you want to do. There's no right or wrong which one you should run over which one or the other. It's just your preference. And because of that, it balances out between the attack and the combo, where they both deal damage, they're both explosive, they both fit really well into what that combo should do for its archetype. I think it's just a really solid combo. I think you should all get your hands on one. It's a great one. All right, we have Blast Shield. So 2 explosive, 2 mechanical, 7, 5, and 5. Corner 1, damage to your target. Corners 2 and 3, reduce damage received by. I like this card. Obviously, it starts out with what you want as the pressure. I feel like this, from a designer aspect, I really like that they put the explosive on first, as opposed to you have like damage prevention for the first 2 turns, and then you finally get benefit from the buff that you wanted. But it's like, when you lay Blast Shield, you deal 7 damage to your opponent, which is really good. It's direct damage to your opponent. And then after that, it's like, okay, well, now I have 2 turns of really good damage prevention to kind of sit back and figure out what I'm going to do to kill you. Like if I need to draw cards after playing for a very expensive combo, use those turns to draw cards or do other things in the deck to then afterwards kill them. They can't like out-pressure you after you did that. It's a well-designed card. I want to say it's like a 3-star card. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's nothing that would just break the game. It's half the damage of Time Collapse, and Time Collapse is a game-ending buff. This is more of a very heavy-costed mid-range buff where it applies pressure at the same time giving you really good defense. So it's good to play in the middle of the game when you need to apply that pressure for your opponent to think, okay, maybe I should heal. I can't really deal damage to them, so it kind of puts them on the back step while you're recuperating from what you just did. So it's a well-designed buff. Nothing revolutionary, nothing groundbreaking. I think it's a 3-star buff. It's going to see play in some places. But yeah, I mean, it does what explosive and mechanical both do. So it's Grimjaw. It's okay. It's okay. Right in the mid-ground. Next one, Chrono Dash. 2 mechanical, 2 time. Burn. Alright, burn on a combo, sure. 5 damage, heal yourself for 5. Move 2 of your discarded time action cards to your hand. Very interesting. I think this card is going to have a really good place in some decks. I feel like Chrono Dash, it might actually fit pretty well in a more machine or robot centric deck where your time cards are your card draw mechanics. They're your buff manipulation mechanics. They're a whole bunch of really fun support cards. So being able to move 2 of your support cards back to your deck to then help you utilize and help you kind of finish out the game could be good. It's 5 damage, 5 healing. A little on the low side for combos or combo attacks. But I mean, it's if you think about it this way, it's a 10-point swing. That's a decent amount of swing. And you get 2 cards back, which in tech, they have not had a whole lot of graveyard recursion where they bring stuff back from their graveyard. It's more like what you use in your deck is what you have in your deck. Have fun trying to utilize anything else. So I mean, I feel like this is just, yeah. I mean, these new ones, even the one they brought out before, where it was what's the card? Quantum Loop was kind of a meh one. I mean, I feel like all 3 of them are 3-star combos. They do what they're supposed to do pretty well, but there's nothing where you build an archetype around them. There's nothing where it's a game-ending combo as compared to, I mean, even Nuke is just not a good 4-star or 4-cross combo. That was like a 2-star, maybe even a 1-star combo that was never seen play. These new ones at least are better than Nuke if you want to compare it to the other 4-star combos. But it's always going to be completely a downgrade if you always compare them to Time Collapse. Because Time Collapse is literally, hey, here's literally half your health in 1 action card. It's always a game end. You always have to be afraid of Time Collapse in a tech deck because everyone is always going to be running Time Collapse in a tech deck. So it's like, alright, that should be your 4-cross combo. If you want to run another 4-cross combo, what are you going to run? I mean, you had what? Nuke and Combat Tech Fusion. Yes, Combat Tech Fusion. Anyone remember what that card does? Because no one saw that card be played either. Like they're with tech. I like what they're doing with tech because there's so much versatility. They're at least trying new things with tech, but at the same time, like because they made Time Collapse, where Time Collapse is a staple to always have in any tech deck, no matter what you play. They have that freedom to just make some random stuff and try and see what happens and be like, hey, try this card. If it doesn't work, you always have Time Collapse to rebound on it. We made this really new weird card. Try it. Doesn't work? Well, we still have Time Collapse, so we're still good on that. Like, I feel like Time Collapse is already at the epitome of what the combos should be doing, where any other combo they make it shouldn't be trying to compete with it. It should be just like, what other crazy, random, weird stuff can we do that you might run this over Time Collapse if you want to have fun? Which I completely agree. I completely love that aspect, that their design feel, where they can make cards like this. They can go out of the box. The 2 costs are so good. Exactly. We have what? Time Leap, Time Flicker, Overwhelming Blast, Empowered Implant was even a fun one to run with 2. Now we have Blast Sequence and Anti-Magic Pulse. Like, there is very specific ones for the 2. Sorry, Grimjoe. Yeah, we're going off tangent here. I apologize. Yeah, there's very strict ones for the 2, the 3, and the 4 that you're always going to run. That I feel like with that top rating, it's nice to see some of these out of the box ones for combos. That's why I'm going to give it a 3. It's fine the Graveyard Recursion for them. The damage and healing is just it's meh, but I mean I'll try it. I'll see if it works. I'll see what deck can run a lot of time action cards in it. All right, Higgs Fusion. So 1 of each combo. Okay, perfect. Maybe this will take over for Smart Bomb or Nitro Heal. We don't know. For healing, move 2 valid combo buffs from your hand into play. Very interesting. Like, as interesting as this buff or combo is, I don't think it's going to see a whole lot of play. I think it's going to be like maybe a 1-star combo, because with combos like this, they're usually better off being paid for with other combos or used to pay other combos. So for this one, you have to get the full benefit of it, you have to have essentially 3 of your 5 combos in play, one of them being this. The other 2 have to be combo buffs. Then you have to have 1 of each of your action cards in order to play this to then get your 2 combo buffs in play. And in which case you do, a lot of buff removal out there is just 2 for 1. So you lay this, and then they both get removed, and you're like, wow, that was 3 combos that I just lost in 1 turn. Like, the setup is so difficult to do, the high risk, high reward is so difficult to do. It's just, this card is probably not going to see play. It's not going to see play. I mean, it probably would work a lot better if it said move 2 valid buffs. So it could be an action or it could be attack. So you could get around the superiority at least with it or something like that. Or you can put them in combos. But because it specifically says combos, it limits you so much that Higgs Fusion is just, it's not going to see play. It's not going to see play over cards like Smart Bomb, over cards like Nitro Heal, where they're used to pay for things, and then even when you do lay them, they're just a good one to have. This one is just, it's their more out-of-the-box thinking one to try and do stuff with more buff-centric stuff, but it's just not good. Not good. I mean, even Regrowth is better because it brings 2 buffs back from the discard pile. 2 buffs. They could be combos as well. This one, they have to be in your hand and to come into play. It's like, no, it's not good. It's a 1-star card. Mechanical Momentum. 2 mechanical, 1-time combo attack. 9 damage. Not bad. Reduce the cost of this combo by the number of mechanical buffs you have in play. Remove 3 of those mechanical buffs. That is actually a very interesting thing to see this run as. This actually is going to have its place in a more buff-centric deck, obviously. 9 damage it's nothing to kind of throw a stick at. We have better damaging combos out there in tech alone. But just the fact that you can literally pay this for free is really good. I know for a fact, like, Anzi the Mender is going to love this thing. It's going to love it so much because it loves removing certain tech buffs at certain times. And it's move up to 3, not remove 3. Oh, no, it does say remove 3 if you're... yeah, so you have to remove 3. I guess it's not up to 3. That would have been a lot better. But, like, you will, with certain archetypes and this new thing coming out, you'll have a lot of mechanical buffs out that, in ways, you'll also want to remove to pay for the stuff. So just having this be a free-cost combo to not dwindle your hand, but use the buffs that you've already used on the board, I want to say this is like a 3.5 star combo. Mind you, it's only 9 damage if you don't run it in a buff deck, but if you don't run it, you're not running this combo. You do have to have buffs out on the board to stay there to utilize, and they have to be mechanical. They can't be, time or explosive buffs, so they have to be mechanical. And I mean, most of the time, it's just, hey, maybe you don't want to remove your buffs, so why would you're holding on to this combo? But then, like at other times, it could be your game ender where you remove the combos for free, and the next turn you have the actions you kept in your hand to deal the 6 and 6. So I mean, there's two ways to look at this. It's just a really well-rounded buff, or a really well-rounded combo attack. I think it's like a 3.5, where you're only going to run it in a buff-centric deck. It's not going to go in the aggressive style because why? 9 damage, like I said, is pitiful. But if you think about it as 9 damage, remove some buffs that you might be killing you, or that you want to remove to make this cheaper cost so you can keep your more damage stuff. I think that is a really, really nice balance of how tech works. And I think this card it's a nice, solid card. It's a more better developed combo card than I've seen them make in the past. And I highly like the more ingenuity of this type of card, where they still play on the gimmicks of, hey, you better remove these buffs before there's a detriment to you, that kind of thing. So, I could see playing some of this in late game. No, this card is definitely more as a kill shot card, yes. You don't want to lay this mid game because you'll be killing your own buffs when maybe they were out to help you defend or whatnot. It's more of, hey, this is a kill card. So it's one of the 3 combo kill cards that I said that you should probably have in a deck to help finish off the game. And this is a really good one to have. It's really fun. Piston Punch. An awesome name. 2 explosive, 1 mechanical. 8 damage. Okay, about average. This one was 9, this one is 8. Okay. Discard the top 2 cards of the recipient's deck. Very interesting. Okay, I mean, this again is, it's like a 2.5 to a 3-star combo. It's definitely not meant to be a game ender. It's not meant to be something that overwhelms your opponent. It's just 8 damage, and then it kind of, yeah, Micros, I know. Some of these names are amazing. But, I mean, discarding the top 2 cards of the recipient's deck could hurt them, could not hurt them. Yes, there is no tech mill, so I'm not trying to splice this into a mill deck. It's this card can be used well against maybe like a combo deck, where they need specific pieces, so you put them into their graveyard before they can draw them. If they're just sitting there trying to draw, and then you put them into their discard pile, especially if you put, like, Burn, the top 2 cards and one of them is Burn, hey, they can't get cards back. If you're playing against Astral, or there's now cards that say, like, if this is the top card of your discard pile, like, if everyone ever tries to play that new Storm combo synergy stuff where the pop card of the discard pile matters, this card could just be a fun interrupt combo. It's 2 explosive, and as we've seen, almost all of the good cards from tech run 2 explosive. Shatter Blast is 2 explosive. Even Time, what is it? Overwhelming Blast is 2 explosive. The new buff, the Blast Sequence, I think is going to be run, is 2 explosive. So this one really helps pay for a lot of buffs really easily. It really helps good payment. It's not that difficult to pay for, obviously, and it's a decent buff. It's like another 3-star buff or not buff, combo. I keep saying buff. It's another 3-star combo where the damage is okay. It's mediocre at that point, and the discard could just be a disrupt to your opponent. So it's a mediocre one that could be fun. It's probably more of a sideboard combo than any real main deck combo. But you don't know how the meta is going to change if there's a lot more combo centric or late game cards that really don't want any cards in their discard pile, stuff like that. So we'll see. We'll see. Maybe this has its place, but I think it's just a decent combo. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing new. It's a 3-star. It's a pretty good combo. Reactor Overdrive. Okay, 2-time, 1 explosive, 4 clunky corners, 1, 2, 3, 4. Rotate this 1 step forward when your enemy plays a combo. Increase damage done to other heroes by. So this one is obviously meant to be an early game buff or a combo. Sorry, well, it is a buff, so combo buff. I was right on that. But it's so conditional that if you draw this late game, you feel really, really bad about drawing a late game, where your opponent's already laid I don't know, 2 or 3 combos on you in good succession, and then this one finally gets out there and like they only lay 1 afterwards to kill you, and you only get the +2 damage benefit. It's just I don't like how restricted this combo is to turning. I'm trying to think if there's any way to improve it or just kind of make it different, but like because it relies on your opponent to play combos. The way I would have loved to see this is have the numbers be in reverse, so it forces your opponent to play combos quicker or remove it. That's what I actually would have loved to see. Is this one obviously it's a 3 paid for 1. Have this start out with 4, 3, 2, then 1, where it's like, hey, your opponent has to remove this, otherwise they're going to get overwhelmed. Or maybe just have it be like 3, 2, 1, and cut a corner off so it's not so much damage presence. But then, like, your opponent is then forced to almost play their combos when they didn't want to, just to kind of spin this thing out quicker or make the damage less, instead of holding back their combos for that right time. I feel like there was a lot better to do with this card than what they did with it, where instead of being like a 3-star card, it's a 1-star card you're not going to see play. It's not going to do anything. Your opponent's going to lay their combos in inopportune times, and you're almost going to just use this for payment for time collapse over anything else. I mean, it can be paid for time flicker, so maybe just run it in that. It pays for half of Shatter Blast. It's just like I'm just not thrilled by this buff. It could have been designed a lot better to at least make it into the mid-range where it puts pressure on your opponent to try and make them play around it. But it's just your opponent's going to say, I don't care. I really don't care if you get like 1 extra damage on your stuff. It's a 1-star combo. Turbo Sphere, 1 of each. All right, I'm liking these 1 of each. I want to see what they do. Last one wasn't that fathomable. But 2, 2, 2. Gain additional actions, take 2 damage. This one, oh my word, this is like an all-star card, guys. This is gonna this is probably definitely gonna replace Nitro Heal in the aggressive style. Mind you, it is a buff, so maybe not that style, but it definitely is going to make your opponent think about even letting this stay on the board. Mind you, if you compare it to the other combo buff, Celerity, which wasn't really seen a whole lot, Celerity gave you an additional action, so you get 3 actions every turn. But when people did run that one was almost immediately removed right away because they're like, no, we're not going to see that. We're not going to have it in play. But the archetypes led into more of an aggressive one where you didn't even have buffs, so people didn't run that one because it was a buff, and people didn't want to run buffs in their deck. Now with this meta changing, hopefully, with tech getting into more buff-centric ones, I think this one is going to see a lot of play. I think this is going to be like a 3.5 to a 4-star combo. It's 1 of each of them, so it pays for a lot of other things really easily. It's good to run, I'd say, in mid-game, maybe even early game, just for the additional actions will get you card draw and make you do a whole lot of things just to get that really early burst. Or it's even just a late game card, where late game you get additional actions after your whole hand is run up. It's one of those where you aren't really niched to when you want to play it. It's just when you play it, you're going to get really good benefits for the next 3 turns. And because of this, if you run Turbo Sphere and Celerity, that is going to be so nuts. So nuts. Yep, exactly, Mick Grizzly. So you play this card, you get 2 additional actions, then you would draw a card for playing a combo on the turn that you lay it. So that's kind of how this works. So like you play it, you get 2 additional actions, take 2 damage, and then as soon as you're done with that turn, you draw a card for combo. Then the next turn you have 4 actions, and then the third turn you have 4 actions. So like I want to say in a lot of these more buff-centric decks, running Turbo Sphere and Celerity just to get like the possibility of getting 5 actions in 1 turn is going to be some majorly fun plays. It's going to be so awesome. You just take one of those turns to just draw 5 cards, and then your next turn, if this stuff stays out, you just start laying everything in your hand. I think it's amazing. I want to say it's a 4-star card. It's not a game-ending card, maybe even a 4.5. But the 2 additional actions for 3 turns is very, very beneficial to you. You can use it for card draw, for laying stuff like that, or for attacking, defending, doing whatever you want to. That and the payment is what makes it really nice too. Is because it's 1 of each. It can fit into almost any more buff-centric tech deck, and I really love this card. I really love this. Where no, I completely agree. I think it's one of the better ones, if not the best one that I've seen so far from tech. Yeah, Blast Sequence. I mean, outside of Anti-Magic Pulse, that was a really good one too for like more game-ending stuff. But Turbo Sphere, all around, is going to be run in almost all of these new tech decks that have buffs in them. Because, like I said, Celerity wasn't run because the decks that did really well didn't run any buffs, so it was always removed. Now that we're going to see more buffs, Celerity and Turbosphere, I think, are going to remerse back into the meta, and it's going to be so much fun to watch tech just get like 5 or 6 actions in a turn. And if you think about it like this, if you put this in a robot deck and you build that robot factory, you essentially, like, in one turn could have like 7 or 8, or like you could have up to 9 actions within one turn. That's like way more than Astral has ever been able to produce ever. And that is nuts. That is so insane to me that you can get up to 9 actions on like a perfect field. That's, oh my god, that's crazy. That is so crazy. All right. Next one we have. Oh, that was the last one. That was the very last one, guys. I'm glad we ended on a really high note for this card. With the whole tech review wrapped up, this is all of my Kindred stuff. I have already filmed a unaligned review. I'll just put that to my YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that, because I will be posting that tonight or early tomorrow morning, depending on how long the upload takes. It's only like 45 minutes, so it's, you know, a quick view. There's only like 10 unaligned cards. That's why I just did a YouTube video about it. I didn't want to spend an entire stream talking about 10 cards. I didn't feel like that was a very full night worth of discussion. I hope you guys enjoyed the tech review that I did. I hope you guys have a chance to go back if you haven't seen my other reviews. To check them all out, to get my opinions on them, see if you may have learned something else. Leave comments below if you think that I missed something or just didn't see something that you saw and like, hey man, like you didn't consider playing with this card. If you do like that, it's going to be some really crazy interactions. I would love to hear that in the comments. I would love to be like, oh my god, I didn't even think about that because of all these new family orientations changing. There's a whole bunch of stuff that people aren't been looking on, stuff like that. So I really encourage you to give my feedback to me to help me grow this channel with you guys. I'm really happy you're supporting it, coming on, watching me every day. Obviously, I did these reviews one night in a session. I will not be streaming once a night, like for the entirety of this. I have a life, unfortunately, outside of this, and I will be trying to stream 2, maybe 3 times as this gets a little more popular. As the Kindred set comes out, there's going to be a lot more meme decks to build. There's a lot more meta decks to build. We're going to try it all. We're going to own all the cards. Like I stated before, the only cards that I don't own in the app are the toy cards, and there's only, like, I have 805 out of 813, so, like, I can build a good majority of them. So I feel like me streaming this is a very good thing to just have a crazy random stuff to build anything I want. As I said before, also, if you guys have a deck that you want me to take a look at, if you value my opinion, send me a link and be like, hey man, I came up with this deck idea, can you give me a few suggestions? It's not working right, am I missing something? I would love to do it. Or if, like, after a while of playing, you found a really fun deck that you want me to give it a shout out, like, hey man, I made this fun deck, it's a meme deck, I just thought you'd like to take a look at it. If I do, and I love it, I will build it and I'll play it on stream, and I'll give you credit for it and be like, dude, I love this deck, this is so awesome, maybe get some feedback on it and whatnot. I'd love to do a highlight stream of what you guys have been having success with in this game. As a final note, Dr. Attilis has been hosting me almost this entire time. If you have come to view me through him, I greatly appreciate him for being a big supporter of this game. He's one of the top tier pro players of this game. He won PAX East. He was runner-up in the U.S. Nationals. I highly recommend going to check out his stream if you have not. He's also done card reviews. I plan on going to watch his videos now. I didn't want to watch any of them until I gave my own personal review, so I want to watch his, and I highly recommend watching his too, so that you can get other people's opinions before this all comes out. I think they're all on his Twitch channel, so if you just go to Dr. Attilis on his Twitch, support him too, support anyone that loves this game as much as I do. It's amazing. Well, I really want to grow this community. I want to grow as a big kind of big Kindred family, and just kind of grow with that. So I really hope you guys have a good night. I'm going to log off and hopefully go take a shower and all that other fun stuff. I'm glad you guys really appreciated this. Like I said, I recommend going and check out my YouTube channel. Give a subscribe down there to help that grow as well. Check out my other stuff. Leave comments about what you like to do below. I will not be online this weekend because I'm going out of town with my girlfriend for their grandparents' 60th anniversary party. So I think the next time that I will be on is Wednesday next week, which will definitely by that time have the Kindred app out, or Kindred cards in the app out, and we will just start playing. We will play some crazy fun games. I really want to start out with the new Mythic Heroes, but if you guys have some success with some really fun decks, don't be afraid to share them with me in like a private chat, just in case you don't want to like share your good deck with someone else and just want me to take a look at it. I would love to do that. I'd love to talk with you guys more about this game and how much fun it is. So go check Dr. Attilis out. I'm definitely going to check out his review streams. Catch me next week, Wednesday, when I start finally playing with the Kindred cards, just building some random fun decks with some of the new synergies that I've been talking about, been waiting for, and just trying to build some fun gimmicks. I'm not going to try to be that competitive until we finally figure out the meta, but I'm going to find some fun interactions, and I cannot wait to share them with you. So thank you guys very much for giving me a follow. Follow me for this entire review stream. It's been a blast talking with you guys. Can't wait to catch up more next week, Wednesday. And yeah, that's about it. Have a nice night, guys. Ciao.